So, I am Amorphous. With me today, I have Randy Smith. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Randy Smith. I worked on the Thief series, including Thief, the Dark Project, back in 1997 is when I joined that team as a junior designer and scripter, and I stayed with the series through Thief Deadly Shadows, which shipped in 2004.
Right. And according to my research, which involves looking at the Thief wiki, and as we all know, wikis are always reliable,
Yes.
you worked on the levels Keeper's Training, Haunted Cathedral, Return to the Cathedral, obviously, and Escape.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Return to Cathedral is my baby level. That's the one I spent the most love and affection and attention on. Keeper's Training I spent a long time on too. That was also one was mine.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other ones I've made contributions. Everything's a collaboration in game development. So even when I say Return to Cathedral is my level, of course, part of the reason people love that level so much, as one example, is because Eric Brocious did the audio for it, and it makes it very creepy.
Yes.
So, yeah, everything's a collaboration, but I was fortunate to be the game designer owning some of these things.
Mm-hmm. And on Return, I believe you're listed as like co-designer with Mark Lizotte, who, as far as I can tell, was the art director.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you tell me a bit about what he actually did on that level? Because when I was going into the research, I kind of was under the impression that you did most of the work on Return.
Yeah, I did the design and story kind of stuff. I was given a one-pager. So I joined Thief in 97, as I said, and it was still like about, 18 months away from ship. And at that time, sort of the overall plot arc was already figured out, and a lot of the world building, some of that stuff was in place. But each level, this is Metal Age, right?
This is Dark Project.
Dark Project. This is?
Yeah.
What amazing detailed textures we had.
Yeah, this is
anyway.
The Haunted Cathedral.
I saw me a sneak scene long ago.
Oh yeah, is this Haunted Cathedral?
Yes, this is the Haunted Cathedral, first level in this group of levels.
Oh right. You start. I remember you start.
Yes.
Now. Anyway, so there's just like a one-pager for all the missions, though. So like kind of as I said, the broad story arc was figured out, but I just got handed a one-pager that was like, so anyway, Garrett goes back to the cathedral, and he's seen the eye through the window previously, but now he breaks in. And there's all these like zombies in there, and he grabs it, and it turns out it's a big trap, or there's a bunch of bodies, but then they rise up and they're zombies, and so he has to make his way out through the back. That's kind of all it said.
Yeah.
And so I put in a lot of details.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to fill in all the design details and think about the actual specific level design where things would be and which textures would be on the floor and which places and how the cathedral is laid out. And then I kind of invented the entire cloister area in the back in the Brother Mira's quest.
Mm-hmm. I appear to have fallen in a hole. So I guess one thing I was going to kind of start by asking is about how much do you remember about like this game and designing levels in it, and when was the last time you played it yourself, for example?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, is the stream supposed to be the husky dog and say Rick McKnight on the top right now?
Oh. Uh-oh.
That's what I'm thinking.
Oh no, the stream is up. You should be able to refresh. Maybe it just didn't bring down the host. You should be able to see the Thief stream now.
I'm sure that your viewers are very excited to listen to me learn how to use technology. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. Now, this looks like Haunted Cathedral.
Yes.
Anyway,
one second. Allow me to kind of turn off these notifications. These notifications are good when I'm doing my normal streams, but right now they're going to kind of distract. They're a little bit loud. Remove that. All right, cool. Notifications should be stopped. Apologies to anyone who might follow and doesn't get a notification for it. Okay, go on.
Cool. I was very technical, but still on the game design team, not on the programming team. So, I didn't write and compile code unless it was script code, which is like a little bit a layer less, complex and close to the engine than regular code.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't hands-on played Thief in some time. I think I've toyed around with it a little bit, but it's not like I played all the way from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I do know the mentality behind games like this and how they're implemented and architected, and I've seen lots of bugs and bizarre behaviors and so forth, so I have a suspicion I'll be able to help you out if you have questions.
Sounds great. You might have been confused when I mentioned that I fell in this hole while I was walking back away from a zombie.
That was my cue that I was looking at the wrong video.
Yeah. I also turned on the lights because this game is very dark. I'm actually playing this game almost entirely unmodded.
Nice.
So, do you know about New Dark?
Fill me in.
Okay, so New Dark is a fan-made, I think, like, modification of the Thief 2 engine, or a version of the Thief 2 engine, kind
Right.
of.
Yes, I do know about this.
And it's what a lot of people use to play the game casually, because it's just a bit less buggy, and it runs a bit nicer on newer computers. But on Windows 10, this game actually runs really well, completely unmodded.
Nice.
I am using a mod called DDFix, which I don't know fully what it does, but it like messes with menus and stuff a little bit, just to make them run a bit nicer. But yeah,
This game looks fun.
yeah, it's a bit.
This is one of the often, reviled monster levels, though, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think people kind of oh dear, I fallen in a hole. I think people kind of misunderstand the monsters a bit, because you can still stealth around them just the same way as humans. It's just they don't make as obvious cues, so
Right.
it's harder to tell.
That's correct. Yep. And that's fair too. It's like it's also a matter of fantasy. Like if you imagine yourself being a thief who's running around collecting treasure, you imagine yourself picking pockets and jumping from rooftop to rooftop in a city and so forth, but not like avoiding zombies or sneaking up behind spiders. So.
The reason I went off on the tangent about Old Dark, New Dark, though, is to mention that this game is actually really dark on modern hardware. I think it's darker than it's supposed to run.
Possibly, although, we made this game, first of all, it was in the 90s, and we were a pre-indie company. We weren't really signed with a major publisher and stuff like that. We definitely had like a culture of doing whatever we wanted. And in the 90s, the games were a little bit more hardcore back then, as it was, And then on top of that, we're in Boston in the winter, and it was just never bright. And we were in this office with the windows and the shades all closed. So it's just like, to us, it was plenty bright enough.
Yeah, so but what you're seeing is the stream is actually upped by about 25% brightness, I think. So for me, some of that's actually the reason I turned on the lights, to make it a bit easier, because walking around this level is actually pretty much pitch black for me, even in the dark. It's pretty brutal. Alright, so there's a reason I actually brought us to this particular part. Do you remember this section of the Keeper's area of Haunted Cathedral with all the traps in it and this locked door with the crushing wall?
This looks like something I would have done, yeah, sure.
So there's this locked door, which you can lockpick, and
Yep.
people say that you're kind of intended to be frantically picking this lock as the wall closes in behind you.
That sounds better.
And also there is the option to rope arrow up above it.
Yep.
With the ceiling, because it's made of wood. But something that's actually really controversial that no one has managed to agree on is whether you're supposed to be able to just mantle over this.
Supposed to is an interesting word when it comes to Looking Glass. I would guess that we would have flagged that as a bug and said, like, yeah, it'd be better if you were forced to do one of the other two options. But, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could also theoretically bring a piece of debris over here and stand on top of that and be able to mantle it, even if it was another foot or two higher, right?
Or perhaps an item, holy waters.
Yep, exactly. So it's sort of like, oh, nice. Can you get your holy water back then?
I could open the door.
Yeah, exactly. Probably not, I would say. Probably we would have preferred it if it was not easy to mantle over that, so that would drive you into one of the other solutions, instead of being like, well, here's two cool things that could happen, or you could just do a really normal thing.
Yeah. So you're not supposed to be able to mantle over this wall, probably.
Yeah, but again, supposed to is a difficult word. But yes,
Yeah,
I would say that that's probably a design bug, whether it's still in the database. I wonder if the database for the bug database for Thief 1 still exists somewhere. Probably not. But if it did exist, I bet that bug's in there.
Okay. So there's the big word from the developer. Cheating.
There you go.
Don't do it.
You have it. Yeah, if you do that, you're cheating.
All right.
You can cheat in a simulation. I thought you were gonna ask about whether the move. I think we had a bug where the moving wall would get blocked by the rope arrow for a while.
Oh.
What happens when the moving wall hits the rope arrow?
That's a good question. So this wall is actually kind of weird. Sometimes it just decides it doesn't want to squish me. Like it'll stop about right there and then just move back without me doing anything.
Well, it doesn't want it to be too hard. Yeah, that sounds like a state problem.
Mm-hmm.
Script. I wonder if I wrote this script.
I was actually playing around with this just earlier to see if, just in case this kind of chat came up with this wall. It's also an object, which means I can kind of just, once it gets to the wall over here, I can kind of just lean through it.
Yeah, well, leaning is,
Oh yeah, look, there it is. It decided not to squish me.
Well, you left the pressure plate, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, I see. You gotta be standing on the pressure plate.
That's the state thing, right? Like the script knows if the pressure plate is down and it knows if the pressure plate is up. And then it just has to sort of manage to think about what it wants to do. If it was advancing, but then the pressure plate went back up and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You would think it would do something very intuitive, but that doesn't necessarily mean it does.
Yeah. High-speed collision here.
Yeah, this is very dramatic. So this is actually not a moving wall. I'll give you a little drama. This is an elevator. It's implemented under nope. Cool. Well, it's sublimated. It's sublimated the rope arrow, right? That was the original. Are you gonna die now?
Maybe. Let's see if I can pick the door fast enough.
So yeah, we don't have. I'm pretty sure we didn't have the like squishy moving wall trap technology, and so I believe this came out of. This is an outgrowth of elevators, which we did have in the game, and the need for something to happen if the player decided to block an elevator by stacking stuff underneath it, such as one's own body. Mm-hmm. And it's the kind of thing that we have to deal with in simulation games where like we just don't know what the player is up to or what they're capable of. Like they just have a lot of freedom to edit the environment. We talk about a game like Breath of the Wild, which is an absolute masterpiece, and how much player freedom there is. But they're pretty careful about stuff. Like if you leave a giant pile of bones and walk off, everything gets cleaned up behind you. The world is very persistent, but it's not nearly as persistent as the Thief world. Like literally, the save games here are just the snapshot of the level at that time. Like literally every object can be in any state, depending on what you've done to it. Mm-hmm. So that is to say, like the world, and you guys know this, like the world is your palette, and you can change anything that you want. So we had this elevator problem where, because of that, the players could just like stack crates under the elevator, or stand in the elevator, or put weird things that don't really have real physics, because the elevator isn't a real physics. Like we didn't have a real physics engine; those are pretty advanced, and they didn't exist so well back in 1996, 97, 98 kind of thing. There's some, but not very good ones. And so it's doing kind of like hacky things. And then as it descends, and it's like, oh man, there's all this physics stuff in the way down here. We just had to figure out what to do about it. And I think one of our solutions is that would destroy things that were under there. And that leads to this other whole set of problems that we wind up with, where it's like, what if it's, the eye in Return to Cathedral that you put under there? Now you've made your current mission unwinnable, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I think we had at least experimented with that idea of putting, making them the elevators destroy things. Mm-hmm. And then you get that working, and then we're like, cool, why don't we make a trap with this? I can't remember if we kept the elevator behavior that way or if we reverted it.
Yeah, I think I heard you talk in one of the interviews with the rock paper shotgun guy. I forgot his name now. That's a shame.
Kieran?
What was that?
Was it a long time ago? Was it Kieran Gillen?
Maybe. No,
yeah.
maybe, I'm not sure. Either way, I heard you talk in one of the interviews about how some things were kind of designed with like, well, we've already got this mechanic. What can we do with this?
Oh, totally. Yeah. That's it's a great economic way to do level design and feature design in games. Mm-hmm. I will say one thing I regret about their Cathedral, and this I wasn't good at scale. I come from a tabletop D&D world, and I was like, mm-hmm. Rooms are 10 foot by 10 foot. That's like the average room. And Orc's in it. He's guarding a chest. You kill him, you take his gold. Duh. So I can't remember exactly how big the Cathedral is. And it looks like a cathedral. It's nice. Yeah. But all like the main room feels good, but then as a consequence, all of the little side passages feel super cramped and unrealistic.
Yeah. I was gonna ask something about this. I don't remember what now. Oh yeah, or no, I was gonna comment that like in Drawmed, I messed with Drawmed a little bit myself. Scale is kind of hard as it is because it's all very abstract until you get right down there in it.
That's true in any 3D engine.
Yeah. Now the eye is complaining at me for leaving. Yeah, that's another thing to ask about. What would you suggest as like advice for people who are making fan missions in Drawmed, the same general tools you worked with for a while?
General advice? I mean, a lot of it would be sort of generic creative advice or game development advice. You know, like block out your entire level, get the flow right, make sure your pacing is good, make sure your scale is right, that it matches your movement speed, it matches like the flow and the drama you're trying to create. You know, and do that with very little or no sense of visual artistry. So it's called gray boxing in video games. And then once you kind of got that the way you wanted, stub out your gameplay where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to need some shadows here and an alcove there, and that'd be pretty cool if I had a little challenge with a bunch of, torches here, and here's where I'm going to put the water arrows, etc., etc. And then once you got your gameplay right, then go through and add like the layers of polish, whether that's like fine adjustments to patrol paths or the visuals or final lighting, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because you want to work from that sort of top down direction, because if you get like this perfect little scenario, but then it's like the overall flow is crappy and within the right way and whatever, then it's much harder to build a ton of details that lead into and out of that very well, as opposed to like, oh, I'm already leading in and out well, now I just want to get this moment right.
Yeah, and one thing about Drawmed I've kind of noticed as compared to other editors, more modern editors, is it's very hard to undo things on a large scale. Things are kind of set in stone once you do them, and once you polish them especially.
Yeah, for sure. And like modern editors do a lot more grouping, where you can be like, this folder, it contains all of the things that make up this building. And in Drawmed, it's like a building is just an arbitrary collection of brushes. And I did a lot of work in Drawmed. I don't know if people have analyzed their levels in Drawmed. I was one of the more organized ones, and I'd be like, in sequential order, this set of brushes all refers to this part of the cathedral. And when I had to do like fancy state operations, then sometimes that was out of order, but I still did my best to be like, well, 1 through 10 is where I set out the spaces the cathedral's in, and then 140 through 720 is the actual cathedral, blah blah blah.
Yeah, that's
and by contrast, so I did my best, and this required going through and like reordering brushes and stuff, like super fussy stuff. By contrast, El Pagliarulo was the sloppiest ever level. So like, he didn't even I would type in numbers and make sure my brushes lined up correctly. He would just like slap them in visually, and if it looked good to him, he'd keep moving. He'd rotate them to arbitrary angles, all this stuff. But guess what? His style is great. His gameplay was awesome. He did the rooftop levels in Thief 2. Mm-hmm. And that was a big lesson to me. Like, it takes lots of different approaches. You have lots of different DNA to the material that comes out.
Yeah, there are certainly very different styles in the missions in Thief, and once you kind of know who did what levels, you can guess at different levels that you don't know, which is really cool. So you seem pretty prepared to talk about the weird quirks of this game. So
I'll do my best.
Let's start with perhaps one of the weirdest. I just went through that wall. What happened?
Do it again.
Okay, so what happens is you crouch, you lean with your back to the wall, and you jump.
Okay. I will say 2 things. This wall appears to be very close to width 0.
It is very thin. I think it's like 1 Drawmed unit or something similar to that.
Yep. And
it's about as thick as a door.
And as I was explaining with the elevators, like physics is where, especially in the 90s, where a lot of our game engines really struggled. And so, because we use physics for stuff like, how come you can't jump over a wall or out of the level or move through walls? And if you can move through walls, then our entire flow and our entire gameplay starts to break down. Mm-hmm. So physics is super important, but we didn't really have, we had very rudimentary physics engines. So here you got a very small wall, and most of the time, for various reasons. So the short answer for you is that one of the leaning or the jumping or something like that isn't really using physics; it's bypassing it. So instead of saying like, I'm leaning, so what I want to do is, so the player is represented as a snowman. Mm. And I think I know that when you see it in Drawmed, it's a square and it has a face, and his name is Jorge. No, the default texture's name is Jorge, but he has a little smiley face on the front.
Yeah, a little plank of wood looking thing.
but I think that's just to show you where he is. I think he's actually represented as a snowman, a two-part snowman. So
he's made of 2 units, the head unit and the feet unit. I'm not sure exactly what those look like, sort of dimensionally. I've never seen a representation of them, but that's what I hear. They're two bits.
I think this is the game where you're a snowman, a two-part snowman. So when he leans, what you would imagine you do in a modern engine is you just tell the top one, like, hey, you're on a spring, and I want you to apply force in this direction. And by doing that, you enter into the realm of the physics engine, and everything gets resolved the way it should, right? Where it's like, cool, I'm trying to apply force against this wall, but I can't because, there's a wall here, and so instead I'm pushing back on your feet because you're leaning against the wall, whatever, something like that. And then jump, similarly. I had a question when I was watching your speedrun and seeing you do this, like, crazy parkour thing as you're in free fall, and I'm like, that's not supposed to be that.
Oh, yes, the Blackjack glitch.
We'll come back to that. Oh,
yes.
Okay, let's come back to that one. I bet it's a very similar answer. So basically, instead of actually using the physics engine natively like that, we'll do stuff like, say, like, well, because it causes all these problems that we can't handle, where it's like, well, what if your feet, the game assumes your feet can't slide, so if you're pushing against the wall and your feet can't slide, how do you resolve that, blah, blah, blah. So instead of using physics, it's just sort of like, here's what I want you to do. I want you to move the top of the snowman over by 0.1 units, then check to see if you're out of the world. You're not out of the world, cool, that means you're still in free space. Now do it again and do it again. So you iterate over that, and you're like, that's how you lean. I'm guessing about the specifics here, but it's something like this, right? And it could have been the jump is part of this as well. And so then if you have a wall that's only like a 1/10 of a unit, or a 100th of a unit thick, then guess what? You just tunneled through, right? You did one check on one side, another check on the other, and you're like, they're both open, so therefore it's legal.
Yeah. So people in the chat have said this wall is exactly 1 unit. Psychos is saying that, well, there are a couple of things we suspect. Here are our theories, basically.
Yeah. Walk me through all the steps.
Yeah, so you crouch, you lean,
crouch,
and then you jump, and it goes through the wall. Your back needs to be to the wall.
Your back needs to be to the wall.
Now, there's also something you probably can't hear because you wouldn't want to be listening to you and me echoing. But every time I do this, there's a little mantle noise as well.
Right, and mantling teleports the player, I think.
Yeah, actually, I need to go to Bonehorde. We can keep talking, but not Bonehorde.
Give me your theories. What are your theories?
So what we think is happening is we talked about those two bits of Garrett that exist. So the thought is that he's either mantling himself, and it's teleporting him backwards, or he's mantling like the floor or some other like jagged bit of geometry or something.
Yeah, or it could be something like that wall is made up of 2 blocks that we thought were exactly, aligned, like 2 horizontal blocks, but there's a tiny little fragment of empty space, and just happens to be the case that right there the mantling code in its check notices and is like, oh, the user wants me to mantle on top of this thing. And so it does the teleport, works in position to mantle, but then it's like, oh, wait, no, I don't have room to mantle. There's another wall up here, and so it gives up. I mean, there's a million things could be happening.
Mm-hmm.
The real answer is that some of the simulation uses actual physics engine, the rudimentary 90s one, and some of the engine uses defeating physics code because we couldn't actually rely on the physics engine, and then that gives room for these errors.
Mm-hmm. You said that the mantle teleports you, so I wanted to show off this little bit of geometry here. It just shoves you back anytime you try to mantle that.
Oh, nice.
I don't know why it happens. It doesn't happen every time, but if you get just the right angle.
What I mean, I think we should that the mantling still teleports you. There's that kind of pop when you first start to mantle and you get like in position.
Yeah.
Where you don't see your camera interpolate up to that position, but you pop. I think that's a teleport. And it's better described probably as a snap into position. We didn't want to mantle arbitrarily from any offset. So we're like, well, first we'll snap you to the offset we like, and then we'll perform the mantling animation. And I think that you're sort of getting an exploit from the fact that you're doing the mantling in a certain spot. I don't know why that one's pushing you back though. That's weird.
Yeah,
that could be just a weird confluence of geometry.
Yeah, it's just that one bit, so I bet it's just the geometry's a little weird there. I don't know why.
Yeah, it seems like totally legit geometry.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I should have preempted everything by saying, like, I am totally guessing. These are pretty good guesses. But there are people, who wrote the code and who may still literally remember what concessions they had to make make sure it worked well enough. And they might be upset with me if they're listening right now. They're like, that's not true. That's not how mantling works. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from the people who are going to. I'm just, I'm not sure how to contact most people who worked on this game. You were really easy because you have an active company and a Twitter account and all that. But some people are kind of just hidden.
Yeah, I mean, and also I make it sound like there's an army who's just ready to give you these answers. In truth, most people I think remember about as well as me, with occasional ones who remember certain bits more. And you would really kind of have to assemble an army. You'd have to get the whole team back together again. That's a very dramatic consciousness by this. What do we call those guys?
These are bug beasts, I believe, officially.
That's a great name for them. Very creative.
Yes. These are ape friends.
Yep.
Ape beasts. I call them friends. They're my friends.
They're friendly.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool if he was a physical ragdoll?
So we were talking about the Blackjack glitch. This is just a good level to show it off because it's kind of open and with lots of vertical design. So the way it works is you pull out the Blackjack, you swing it, and then when you swing it, you pull out the sword and then the Blackjack again before the swing finishes. And this is what we call a loaded Blackjack. Then when you sheath the Blackjack next, it sort of stops your momentum. Now what we think is happening is that so as I understand it, the items in this game, all the inventory items and the weapons and all that, all have a physical presence in the level. And
yeah, I think that's true.
And when you sheath the Blackjack here, for some reason it sort of spawns that physical Blackjack object in front of you, or snaps it in front of you or something like that, which causes you to bounce off of it because it's like as far as I've heard, it's like a diamond shape or a pyramid kind of. So you just sort of bounce off the slope, and slopes in this game just kill your momentum.
Yep, that all sounds like a pretty good hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the weapons have a physics representation specifically for resolving collisions, right? So, like, you know, it's kind of an exaggeration to say, quote unquote, sword fighting really works, but sword fighting does have a measure of actual simulation going on. Instead of like, we detect that you're swinging the sword and we look in front of you and then we roll some dice and decide if you hit or not. It's actually like, okay, we're moving the sword through physical space. Does it hit your opponent's sword? Does it hit your opponent's strike zones? Stuff like that, you know? And we're a little bit more forgiving about things like walls, you know, because otherwise we'd be constantly hitting the walls. But I thought it was the case that the sword does not collide with geometry in general. Like, if you get out your sword and you run up to walls, or, you know, a door or whatever, it's not like trying to hit. It's only when you swing it that it's supposed to have a physics rep, right? So you're not hitting the wall, right?
Or if you block, that also causes a physical presence.
Yep, and that's again part of the sword fighting simulation.
Yes,
like it's actually simulated. So I'm a little surprised to hear that the Blackjack would have a physical simulation when it's not being used, but that again sounds like one of these state bugs where it's sort of like, okay, so this weapon's equipped, and then you put this one away, but then it forgets to clean up, and then you come back here, and it's like, right, so weapon is active, right, and then it leaves it there. I don't know if that made sense, but if you're a programmer, you're like, yeah, I get it. I see how that would be the case.
And then, yeah, you can get some really cool situations where these bits in the side of the level that aren't really supposed to be explored, you can kind of just float down into. I think I just died. Yeah. Oh, no. See, slopes kill your momentum, so I can actually land in there. That's fine.
Yeah, so the way you're doing is you're just in free fall, and you do this thing, and then it slows you down. So you're not actually colliding. It looked like you were like doing parkour, and I was like, take that, Mirror's Edge, we beat you by 5 years. So you weren't doing that. You were just like literally in free fall, and you do this trick, and it slows your free fall down.
Yeah, exactly. It just spawns the little Blackjack hitbox. Ooh my. You get some crazy momentum on that. Oh, this is an interesting thing. I didn't even think to ask about this, and you probably wouldn't know exactly. I'm not sure if you ever even worked with this material thing here, but for some reason, when you're holding the movement keys on this, no matter what direction you're holding, it moves slower than if you're not touching anything. Like, you slide really fast if you just don't touch anything.
If you don't touch anything, you slide fast, but if you use any movement, you do. Okay. That would probably be something like there's an override on that zone.
Mm-hmm.
To make, we had this thing early on called the roller coaster that Chris Carrillo made, and I think he was like showing off a feature he implemented or somebody implemented, but it was like it was a test level, and it looked like Crazy Town. It was like totally arbitrary geometry, but it had like one zone. It was like like rivers. They moving along with a current. It kind of had like one zone like that. That was, we would later go on to implement rivers with it, but in the meantime, it was just like space. Looked like outer space or something.
This mechanic right here.
Yeah, this mechanic right here. And he had them arranged in a cycle, so it would just like you would go swimming around and then wind up in a different spot, and you're just like spinning around in 3D space, going up, down, left, right. It's pretty funny, but that might be what's going on there. Like, so basically, all that's to say, like, we can do this mechanic you're seeing right now without the air meter and without the visible water, because it's just a spatial force. So it might be that we did something like that was sort of like, if the player's not moving, give them this momentum. But then if they are moving, the player's movement took priority.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of how bunny hopping works. Because when you jump in this game, you gain momentum, and that was obviously changed in Thief 2, where it doesn't add any momentum anymore. And when you land, when you're on the ground and moving around, you gradually slow down to your normal walking speed, but not immediately. So if you jump quick enough, you keep some of the momentum from that previous jump, and that's how you get lots of speed from bunny hopping.
Yeah. How do you jump rapidly, other than just hammering on the spacebar?
Pretty much just time it right.
Yeah, okay.
It takes practice. It's probably one of the things that requires the most practice. Also, I'm a bit trapped in these watery tunnels.
Trapped in the watery tunnels.
Let's get back into the realm of stuff you did. What else is there to ask about? Oh yeah. Here's one other thing I haven't mentioned yet. Flinging. Now, if you slam your face into something with a lean, like an object, it just sort of flings you around.
I used to do this too.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys knew about this long before any of us did.
I mean, quite a few of these. Here's the deal. Quite a few of these are probably reported bugs that we actually knew about. And there are so many things you want to improve when you have a deadline to ship a game. It's hard to make the case that some of this stuff should be fixed. And in part, I would say that, certainly it's not the case that we presage like Let's Play and speedruns, although to some extent the Looking Glass team understood the concept of speedruns already. That's in the original System Shock, which is the game they finished before this. There's actually kind of like a speedrun parameter where you can like try to beat the entire game in 7 hours, which is laughably long by my understanding. Anyway, but we were aware of this concept that it's the player's game, and it's sort of like we can do a lot to encourage the player to play along with our fiction, but we can't force them to. And if you want to sort of break the game, then in our opinion, you're making it your own, and you're taking some creative license with a tool, like a toy that we gave you, and we're kind of okay with that.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the end of, the end of Project Bugs, and you're like, oh, there's this weird thing where you can do this thing, and then, you go flying across the level. It's like, well, does it happen all the time? It's like, not really. You kind of have to make it happen. It's like, cool, ship it.
Yeah, I like that approach. Where it's like, if it's not going to show up in casual play, you have to do an exploit to make it happen. Just leave it in. It's really fun.
My impression about what's going on right now is that there is a rubber band that connects the top of the player's snowman to the bottom, and I think somehow you're doing something you basically just slingshot yourself across the level.
Yeah, that was our sort of impression as well. Is that when we disconnect the two bits of Garrett by leaning, it obviously wants to sort of snap back together. So when we block that with an object, and then make it snap back together immediately, it just gives us a ton of force.
Yep, and it's one of the few places where we didn't bound that very much. We weren't like, well, as long as the force doesn't exceed this value, and instead it's sort of like, well, the player really needs to be one snowman, so we're just going to really make sure this happens.
All right. So another thing people words. Another thing people were wondering about is if you've ever followed any of the fan content, like the fan missions or speedruns or Let's Plays and stuff like that. Like, how much of that have you seen?
I can't say that I'm current on the community as of 2019, but I was certainly right after we shipped, I was pretty active in the community and following along. I played a bunch of the fan-made levels and stuff. I've seen a few of the more modern ones a little bit on YouTube.
That's cool.
I mean, yeah, it's very heartwarming that the community exists and is still interested in the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not super active in it anymore.
Yeah, I understand that. I think in one of the interviews he said that you obviously spent a lot of your time on this series, spent a good portion of your life, and you kind of want to move on to other things at some point.
That's the idea, yeah. And I did. It's been a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of which, what are you working on now? If you have any sort of hint you can give us, is there anything coming up for you?
Oh, geez. So my own company, an indie studio, myself and David Kalina founded in the year 2008. So that's we released our first game, Spider, in 2009. So it's been 10 years now. That company is no longer making new games, and since then, David's been working on Subnautica. So some of you guys might know that. Yeah,
I've played all of Subnautica. I didn't realize that.
Yep. So David's been active on that team. I've been doing various types of contract work. Oh, it's because this skull weighs 20 pounds. Can I just give you the short answer?
Yeah. Well, I remember from one of the interviews that you were talking about the skull, and because it was happening on Thief Gold, this trick didn't work.
Oh, yeah, that was mean of me. I fixed this bug. I think it was like 100 pounds. It's like every object in Andromeda got a default weight, and for some reason, there's a kind of an inheritance thing where like it gets its default weight the day it's made, and if somebody changes that later, it doesn't always get updated. And for some reason, that skull kept its default weight, even though later on, Tim Stelmach, I believe the lead designer, went through and gave, he like tweaked the parameters for all the objects in the hierarchy. Be like, well, it should be this, it should be that, and then so skulls wound up being like 1 pound or whatever, but that's one still whatever it is, 20 pounds, 200 pounds, 100 pounds.
Yeah.
And so then players are like, cool, it's a doorstop.
Yeah. Just sitting there, it's practically asking to be a doorstop.
Yeah, exactly. It's totally.
Intended, not cheating.
Yeah, so I've been doing contract work and working on a pitch for a new game I want to make, and I've been part of a few cool teams. One of them I can't talk about, but it's an indie game that will be announced before too long, and it's going to be a really big indie game in 2019 or 2020, whenever its release date is. I can't be less vague than that.
Okay.
But you'll see my name on it, and it's going to be really cool.
Sweet, I'll keep an eye out for that. And you guys should too, anyone who's watching.
Do what?
Oh, I'm just talking to the viewers there. And everybody keep an eye out for that.
Oh, yeah. Man, I really didn't want flash bombs to kill the undead.
Oh.
It's just too easy.
Yeah, it really is. You can, if you go to the start level, that's actually how we, This, actually, let's go on a tangent about this. What is this bug? So what happened there is I clicked continue, then I accidentally clicked it again, and now, if I click this again, it's going to take me to the main menu.
I don't know. Seems like a boring bug.
Yeah. It can kill runs if you're not careful.
Man.
Yeah,
but I actually have plenty of questions for you about speedrunning, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. Sure. Absolutely. There's so many things I want to talk about. But yeah, there's a way to fix this. You can just hit restart.
We're having a meeting of minds between the developer community and the speedrunning community.
Yeah.
So that's a project I'm working on pretty not full-time at all, like a pretty part-time, but it's still cool. The creators in the core team are super awesome, and the game is great. So I'm excited when I'm able to talk about that one. For myself, I'm doing some cool contract work, and I didn't ask before if I could talk about it. It's a different contract that's kind of my full-time gig. And in the background, I've been working on a pitch to bring to publishers and get funded for a new project, which would be, the closest thing I can say about it is like if you imagine a cool Netflix series as an RPG. So it's like lots and lots of player freedom where you can like kind of go anywhere, do anything, talk to anybody, say anything you want, like literally say anything you want, not take your conversation from Conversation Tree. But it's like modern worlds, and it's like relatable characters and relatable drama, as opposed to like, fighting undead and dragons and stuff. So kind of my hope is to be able to like tap into sort of the modern storytelling that we see in the walking simulators, or like Firewatch or Edith Finch, which I like all kinds of stories in games, but those are very compelling to me because we don't see a lot of games stories like that.
Yeah.
But then also those are very not simulated, and so instead this would be very simulated, where dialogue and conversations are even part of like a gameplay thing, where you're sort of approaching them tactically. And so this is something I'm really passionate about. I want to make games that, despite how amazing it is that you're whacking a zombie with a sword, that deal with some other topic matter. I've done stuff like this for plenty of years, and video games have been doing stuff like this since they were invented, and I would like to see what else we can do with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like experimental stuff. Experimental little projects are really cool to play, experience.
Yeah, when I've talked to some people about this project I want to do, they've been like, that sounds like the hill that old designers go to die on. But it's actually not some like pie in the sky thing. It's a pretty finite game design. It's based on some classic ideas from early 80s RPGs, and I'm just going to sort of tweak and modify them and add a couple things. But it's something I know exactly how to do. I just sort of need a budget to do it. Yeah. Which requires explaining it better than I'm doing right now.
So there's a bit of a reason I've come to this particular place, and this is because this is the place where we end this mission now. So the skull door trick isn't actually the fastest way to end this mission now.
Okay.
So the fling here is obvious. What was that?
My little holy water courtyard.
Oh yeah, it's got holy water in the... Oh no, it's just got a water arrow here.
Okay.
But yeah, the fling you already know about. But the reason this actually succeeds in completing the level is a little bit more complex. So there is the goal at this point, since I've got the eye, if I bring up the option or the objectives menu here, which takes a moment, the goal is to leave the cathedral. Yeah. Actually, funnily enough, this is the disc version, that's why it takes so long, but if I do that once, then until I restart my computer, it's fine. I can just do that as much as I want. So what I do before I speedrun is I load up the game and do all my menus. I open the options menu, and I open the map, and all that stuff.
Yeah, you put that asset in memory so it doesn't have to reload.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is intentional. Like, I could have just put brushes in the back of the level that said this is what it means to be outside the level, but I put them everywhere that was literally outside the level, right?
Yeah, and... So what happens here is there's a bit of one of those brushes just sticking out of this wall, because the other side of this wall counts as being outside.
Yeah.
So when we fling, we hit that brush, and it thinks we escaped.
Yeah.
Now there's another aspect to this.
I feel like you did escape.
What was that?
I feel like you did escape. It's the spirit of escaping.
That's fair. There's another aspect to this, though, and that's that I also die when I hit the wall, and that means I can right-click and immediately end the level. Now, perhaps a better place to show off the death abuse thing is actually on Baffords.
Yeah, I saw this in your speedruns. I was like, why does he die at the end of every level?
Yeah, the goal is to die at the end of every level if we can manage it. Bullhorn is a trouble.
That skips your final objective, basically, because you just don't have another objective.
Well,
all of your objectives are crossed off, and that's how we know you won, I guess.
Yeah, at the end of the level, there is, like, once you've completed all the objectives, there's this bit of a fade-out period where it takes like 10 seconds and then the level ends. But obviously if you die, then the level can immediately end because you failed. Now, the interesting thing is, if you complete all the objectives, and I'll try to show this off here, if you complete all the objectives and then die, then you still fail. So this is the only objective of this level on normal mode, and then I die. That's actually going to fail, and I can't continue to the next level. What you have to do is, I can reload my quick save. What you have to do is actually die first and then finish the level objective. Ooh, what's happening here?
Because of when the check happens, it must be.
Yeah. What is happening to my mouse? That's weird. Okay. Oop. Die, please. Nope, die, please. Oh, now I didn't get Deathwalk. This is a very weird bug. I don't actually know why it works. I think people have theories, but let's hear your thoughts on it. So when you die in certain circumstances, like in this wall, you can still walk around.
Oh yeah, I remember this one too.
So you guys knew about this as well?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what causes people to be able to walk around still after dying sometimes?
I almost feel like or somebody on the team isolated this bug, but I can't remember. So the advantage we have when we're working in the engine, right, is that when we're in that 2-second period of time that you just saw when you're walking around while dead, you can just pause the game and go into the engine and be like, what is going on? And just like read the states on like Garrett's body and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To figure out how he's in this desynchronized state. basically, so when the camera goes to the ground like that, it's effectively playing an animation. I don't think it's literally a scripted animation that, like a data stream that's being played on Garrett or whatever. I think it's more of a script.
And if you jump, you stand back up, because it sort of resets that, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So, so it's playing this animation, and that's supposed to be coupled with things like the camera fade starting and, a flag being thrown saying that the mission's over, you're going to die, and that taking away your controls, like all that kind of stuff. So there's this like set of state that gets, so the moment you die, all that stuff commences, right? Mm-hmm. But then somehow you're sneaking something in there where like, cool, I started a physical behavior that in the 2 seconds while the simulation is still running before the camera fade is complete and we reload, during those 2 seconds, the objective gets complete, or I start a behavior like a jump that then, past the window takes control back over. And it's like, cool, well, there's a delay, but now the jump starts, and so the jump gets back into the code, and it's like, cool, so I set this state to flag this, and I do this and that.
Yeah. We've actually, well, I haven't, but people who know a bit more about this kind of stuff have done a bit of research of their own, a bit of testing, and trying to figure out these states. So as far as we understand, it has to do with movement states. Like how if you're climbing a ladder, that's one state. If you're in the water, that's another state.
Yep.
And being dead is a different state.
Yep.
And for some reason, here the states just get confused or something. I don't really understand it myself.
Yeah, no, so it wouldn't, that's all correct, and that's a great explanation of what I was just trying to say. I don't know, like, there's nothing about that geometry I'm looking at that would do it, and it's probably also not, there might be some invisible objects there that are doing something weird, it's possible, but probably most likely it's just a weird situation that you died in, like, that geometry creates the configuration necessary to reveal the bug.
Okay, so someone who remembers a bit more about this testing than I do says it's when the movement states change. So, like in this case, apparently when you fling straight into this wall, it puts you into the jump state because you end up in the air because jumping is a different movement state.
Yep.
And there's nothing on the death state that says you're dead, you can't be jumping anymore.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, dead trigger, like, it's all a game of mousetrap, right? So dead, the fact that you've been detected as now dead triggers a set of behaviors that just assume everything's going to work out afterwards.
Yeah.
But then meanwhile, before you died, or presumably if something like if there's some code that's not checking to make sure Garrett's alive before it triggers something, either way, after death has been triggered, and before the game actually restarts in the 2 second window or whatever, when the camera fades to black, something happens which then resets some of the state. Mm-hmm. Like you enter a jump, and so then the jump's like, cool, here's what I'm supposed to do when Garrett's jumping.
Yeah.
How does this? So this is how it pertains to like you dying at the end of every level. So basically, you commence death, and in the 2 second window, you actually complete the objectives, and then when it checks, it's no longer checking to see if you're dead, I guess.
Yeah. And all that does, the only reason we die at the end of every level is to skip that fade out at the end. It saves like 5-10 seconds depending on the mission.
Nice. Oh, so you complete the level, but rather than wait for the final completion, you just die to make it faster?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. I mean, that's what it takes to be a real hardcore thief.
Yeah, man. Garrett's died like hundreds of times by now. It's really hardcore.
You really want to leave no trace.
Just pick somebody's pocket and then just disappear into the abyss.
Okay, so I was confused when I was watching your speedrun. I was confused because you were sometimes ending the level in places I didn't expect. Like after Bafford, I expected you to have to leave, but instead you were just sort of done.
Yeah, in Bafford's, that's the difference between normal. So in normal, you just have to get the scepter and then the mission ends. But on on hard and above, you have to get back out.
Right. Wow, that was lame of us. You can just pick up the scepter and you're fine.
Yeah.
So you're like, look, I'm the Lord now. You can't attack me.
Yeah, most people, most thief fans typically suggest that people play on hard at least for the first playthrough. Sometimes expert if they really feel lucky. Yeah.
We had players who would really get into Baffords because, I think the fiction there is really ripe for manipulation. But, people would do stuff like knock out every guard and stack them on top of like the dining room table and like
Yes.
cover with all of, like the empty wine bottles in the place.
I've done that before.
And that way it's not your fault.
Yeah.
Oh, you got killed, huh?
Yeah. I was trying to use this lever here, and I don't know why this is here. It's a very strange place for a lever. Because there are a lot of guards here that don't want you here.
I think that's by design, yeah. I think the idea is you're not supposed to be able to just walk in the front door.
Yeah, but I just did.
Yeah, like I said, by design.
Yeah. 1 second, my dog is whining at me and what's up.
This is a very fancy render. Beautiful graphics. I feel like I'm back in the 90s. I can almost smell the CD that these graphics were printed on.
Ooh, I died immediately upon hitting continue there.
And that's pretty good. If you're like this expert player who knows all the exploits and you can get in, but it's pretty hard to live, then we probably tune the game reasonably well.
Yeah, absolutely. Funnily enough,
it's a total trick to make the game, because it's a total simulation. That's why you can't, we didn't intend for you to be able to get into the front gate, but it is possible, strictly speaking. And so we're trying to tune it so that, hey, it's a simulation. You can do whatever you want. You can wiggle through these little exploits. There's no hard gate that necessarily kills you. It's supposed to play out in a simulated way. And yet we managed to tune the guards well enough, despite the fact that they have these crazy awareness states and they have to warm up, from nothing. It takes them a while to respond.
Yeah, if you just walk up to these guys, they're
still capable of killing you.
Don't do anything for a while.
You're really not supposed to break in right now.
I was gonna say though, this is actually before we discovered gentle clips. The wall clipping that was actually discovered really late. This used to be the way we'd get in, is we'd lean through this gate and just open the door from inside.
Yeah. Not only is this a known bug, I remember us all looking at this, thinking about it. We had a playtester who also did speedruns of Baffords. I mean, the playtest staff, right? They'll play these levels almost as much as you have, but they had less time to do so. So they would develop speedruns just by virtue of not wanting to have to playtest the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're just supposed to test some things, so they don't really want to go through the whole mission. They just want to get right there.
Yeah, I do that when messing around with my own fan missions. Is just develop dumb, fast ways through levels.
Totally. This would be well, is this an exploit that we want to fix, or is this the simulation operating as intended?
Yeah. Also, people in chat are calling me a noob for not being able to do the skate clip anymore.
Yeah, I'm not impressed.
Yeah, I don't know what's going wrong here. Actually,
I am a little sad that Blackjack just worked. I don't know where he went.
It only works in darkness, in complete darkness. You have to lure them here and then hit them in the back. I don't know why that's the case.
I mean, well, that's not the spirit, but I can kind of see it. He totally lost you because you're in complete darkness and you're a master thief, and he's like, "Where is he?" And you snuck up behind him and hit him with Blackjack. That's probably the rationale. But when the guards are in an active combat state, it just doesn't feel appropriate. It doesn't feel to the spirit that you can just hit him with Blackjack.
Yeah.
Blackjack's supposed to be for unaware people.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be able to. I'm sure of that. It's just a weird thing with the darkness. I don't know why. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't know if it was. I think it might have been intentional.
Maybe, but most of the time, if I go annoy a guard in the light over here, I try to knock him out.
Yeah,
I was in darkness. But yeah, if he's in the light, it won't work.
Yep, no, that part's intentional.
Anyway, what else is there?
I guess the thing I wanted to say as I've watched plenty of speedruns in my life, the Portal community and so forth.
Oh, Portal speedruns are absurd.
Yeah, watching you guys do the Thief speedruns, I was like, it's so kind of in the spirit of getting through Baffords front gate, right? There's an intended design that we have where it's strictly speaking, you could go in this way if you really wrangle it or lure those guards out one at a time is a slightly more reasonable approach or whatever. But what we're kind of asking you to do is believe that you're a thief and you're underpowered in a toe-to-toe confrontation, especially against 3-armed guards, but that you have these amazing stealth abilities, right?
Mhm.
And we're just kind of like asking you to play along. And it's like, it's that's the spirit that we call the magic circle in game design, and it comes up in like card games and tabletop games and stuff. It's like like the magic circle includes stuff like, are you supposed to do table talk where you tell people what's in your hand or tell them what you're planning on doing, and are you allowed to bluff? And like those are kind of like house rules. Some people are like, no table talk, and other people are like, yeah, well, I mean, you can if you want. And there's no rules about it, but it very much defines how players are participating in the game and whether they're quote unquote playing along, to the point I'm about to make.
Yeah.
That's what the magic circle is. Like, we all get together to play a game and we draw this magic circle and we participate by these unspoken rules to create this thing. And so we really struggled, because Thief is one of the first games where you were explicitly underpowered in combat. That's not what was going on in games for the most part up until this moment. I mean, like, Quake was the big thing, and Half-Life had just come out. So it was much more about, fragging motherfuckers. And so we really had to kind of get people into this mindset, and a lot of it comes through the fiction, and people do get it, and they play along, and they want to be a sneaky thief instead of a big killer or whatever. But there's always struggles, and that's why Thief 1 has a lot of monsters and Thief 2 doesn't, to get the sense of what the fiction is and get people to play into this mentality, and to, on one hand, have a simulation where they can do anything, and on the other hand, sort of encourage them not to go in through the front gate. Like, there's a lot of iteration just getting people not to go through the front gate of Baffert, to understand that they were a thief. So the game that you're playing today, has all those revisions into it, where we did a much better job setting people up, right?
Yeah.
And so it's funny watching the speedrun community, because I'm like, they have truly made this game. You're just playing a totally different game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you're playing a game where it's like, yeah, so there's this game that's out there that's supposed to be about being a thief, and we're not even playing it like a fighter. We're just not playing that game. We're playing this racing game where we're trying to beat our top scores, and it's by using whatever exploits we can find. And it's just kind of interesting how, like, and there is a magic circle around it. It's just a completely different magic circle that you guys all are in. That
absolutely.
Like, none of our original audience was in.
Give me 1 second. Dog wants back in.
Bandit dog. Everybody on the stream, let's gaze once again on this graphics. I mean, I'm personally impressed that the gears move on the right, and that when one gear turns clockwise, the other turns counterclockwise. That's the level of detail that made Looking Glass games.
Yes.
Right,
the game is very, very nicely detailed, very charming in a lot of ways.
I'm sort of picking on the yes. Also, that.
It is, though. It's true.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching some of your playthrough, and I was like, wow, some of these levels are grotesquely ugly and badly arted. And other ones, I'm like, oh, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Mark Lazat touch. Like, if you really got to apply a lot of effort to it, it's certainly better.
Someone in chat just asked if you can say, why is there a timer in the levels?
Why is there a timer in the levels? I can say that. Easy. Oh, you want me to answer the question? Which levels had timers?
Well, all of them. If you go to, I'll just hit Shift End. You got a stats here. There's a timer.
Oh,
how long the level took.
Oh, sure. Wouldn't you want to know that?
I would.
No, like, I mean, it seems like a great stat.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason to know how many locks you picked. It's not like in real life you're a better thief because you had to pick more locks. Arguably, you're a better thief if you have to pick fewer locks but still succeed at your goals. So, like, all these stats are for fun.
Yeah, I like it as well. It was just a random question that popped up there. Another random question that someone reminded me of. This is actually part of why I came to this level, this escape.
Yeah, this is one of mine.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I don't hate this level. I actually enjoyed it on my first playthrough as well. That's a weird thing, actually. My first playthrough of this game was in 2015.
Nice.
And I really enjoyed it. I actually learned about this series because of a YouTuber I watch, who played Thief 3 first, and I really liked the game, and I actually played Thief 3 before I played this game. Not all the way through, because part of the way through I was like, yes, I really like this, and I went back and got the first 2 games. Yeah, it really holds up, in my opinion. What do you think about this game, honestly, as far as compared to modern games?
It doesn't hold up graphically. Um, yeah, no, I mean, the looking glass mentality is, it has life still in games like, Arcane's Dishonored and, Prey and the BioShock series. Like, that it still exists out there. It wasn't just looking glass, but, I think there's a time before the indie revolution of the mid to late 2000s, when games got really, really handholdy and really, really linear and really didn't trust the player. And there was this idea that if the player failed and they didn't know what was going on, then that they weren't having a good time. They wouldn't like the game. And we'd make sure everything was perfectly well explained. And instead of being like, well, it's a big open world, go wherever you want. It's like, well, don't go to the swamps first. They're really dangerous. Go to the town and talk to everybody and get the art. It's like. And it's very coddling, and for a while it felt like that was the mentality of video games.
Yeah.
And, people make roguelikes today. I grew up on Rogue. As a kid, I played Rogue, and as we all know, roguelikes and Rogue in particular, it's like pretty punishing games. Like, figure it out. And as a matter of fact, figure it out by failing. It's okay to fail. Like,
I've never played Rogue myself, but I'm actually a big fan of roguelikes.
I
like
actually
a lot of them.
I actually object. I'm like the only person. I'm like an old stodgy developer, but I really object to the way the term roguelike is used, because I think people often conflate it with the idea that you die a lot and it's too hard. And like, I don't think Rogue was too hard. I think you did die a lot. But a lot of modern roguelikes are just like, well, you die all the time and it's hard to get better, and that's really not the spirit. In Rogue, every time you died, you're learning something. You're like, oh man, I should have done this thing before I fought a zombie, whatever.
Yes, I really like that as well. That aspect of learning a little bit every time you mess up.
So you're always making forward progress, even if you failed.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's like the same philosophy that Dark Souls had, for example.
Totally. Dark Souls is the standout game that does it super well. So for a while, that none of this stuff existed, and and I was also it really warmed my heart to play Breath of the Wild, because it trusts the player so much and has such an open world, and you can walk right up to the end of the game from the very beginning. You definitely shouldn't, but you're allowed to, and I think a lot of this stuff was present in the Looking Glass games, and so we were some of the last games to not do super great commercially before this became unpopular, and now it's sort of back again as popular again. So it's good to hear that holds up. And then on top of that, there's a lot of very, very smart design that goes into these games, like GTA style emergent gameplay. Like, emergent gameplay was a total thing at Looking Glass before it became popularized in the GTA series. And so this is a big team of people who have been doing this for a long time. This again was my very first project, so I don't count myself as somebody who had been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
I was just joining on and learning as I went here. This is my first project, but they're really good at what they did, and this was a refined version of it. This is their third or fourth immersive sim, And and they had this mentality we're talking about. They really trusted gamers. They were okay with games being smart and not per se difficult, but completely simulated. They trusted the simulation more than their own design. You could walk in the front gate of Alfred.
Yeah.
You really could own it yourself.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that you've made me, a couple of sort of branching conversation topics I've got here now. One is you said something about the game not holding up graphically, and of course it's a bit blocky and textures are low quality and all of that, but someone in chat said this and I agree with them. I think the game still looks really nice because it's designed well. The art design is really good. It's just not as it's not up to date, I guess, is the only thing.
I mean, actually, and so I agree that the art content, a lot of it is good. Yeah, clearly it's technically low poly or whatever, but and the art quality is good. When I look at it, like, I can see the primitive brushes we're using to make these levels. Yeah. And if instead we had a vertex editor, we could have a lot fewer, like, pure verticals and pure horizontals, and that would have been nice. Like, with the same poly count and with the same art, I can imagine a better looking version of this game. Yeah. So that's part of what I meant.
But like, for example, here in Baffords is a good example of the reason I really like the visuals of this game. Yeah. You've got so many colors on your screen right here, right upon starting it up, and it's a very dark game with dark themes and the dialogue and dark humor as well, and it's got all this just surprising amount of color to it everywhere. It's a very colorful world despite being very dark.
Yeah, look straight up.
Straight up?
Straight up. That is the same sky that's in System Shock 1. Just want everybody. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, like, Looking Glass was amazing at world building. A lot of folks, Dan Thron, Laura Baldwin, Terry Brocious, and other folks on the team, put a lot of effort into defining the world and its language and its history and stuff. And then, our direction via Greg LaPiccolo and just the sentiment of the team was not to surface it all. Instead of being well, here's a bunch of exposition about what the thief world is like. We're super vague. The city's called The City, and that paints this picture of vagueness.
Yeah.
And we stuck to it, but we have a pretty good understanding of what's going on in the game world, and you guys probably do too. And it comes out more from the texture of how the characters occupy it. What language they use, or what they seem to be doing with their time, or how they talk about the bear pits.
Yeah. Oh man, this is actually it's a really good example. I bring this up quite a bit. The bear pits conversation, how it paints this picture of a world that is just distinctly not our own and is just a little bit alien. And I just like it. It's really cool. It's just a good little bit of world building, because obviously it's very similar to our world. We've got people here with swords and armor and stuff, but they're talking about these bears that are not anything like what we know of as bears.
Yeah, and there's a reason your first shot starts with a clearly sort of fantasy medieval environment, but there's no actual fantasy. There's no dragons, there's no monsters, there's no magic. And instead you have this weird steampunk lamp. That's very intentional. It's stop and think twice. Oh, good job, servant.
I don't know what he's trying to do. I've never seen this before. I don't think I've ever stood around at the entrance to Bafford's long enough.
He's trying to pathfind in. Nobody told him the gate was down.
Well, I'll open it for him.
Yeah, you should do that. If you do it fast enough, he might not even know you're there and just move in.
Oh no, he's running away from me. No worries.
Coward.
He's free now. Another thing I wanted to talk about is...
So yes, I guess the answer to my question is the game definitely holds up in a lot of ways. The world building's great. The conception is great. And the things I was saying about it originally is the philosophy behind the game design and the spirit of trusting the player and providing a lot of freedom and trusting the simulation. I think those things are pretty precious qualities even in modern times. And some of the absolute best games like GTA 3 and Breath of the Wild embody those qualities. Which isn't to say that this game is as good or better than those. I'm not making that kind of comparison. I'm just saying those are games that I love, and I see a lot of that spirit here in this game.
Yeah. Somebody in chat says that it's hard to explain, but they feel like the blocky level design lends itself to the game design, makes everything more readable.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I also have concerns when games get very visually sophisticated. Sometimes it's a lot harder to pick out the information that's important to be able to play it. The visuals of the game can overcome the ability to actually enjoy the game itself. They can compete. They don't have to, but they can.
Mm-hmm.
This level's better than I remember. In my memory, this one sucks.
This is, as far as I understand, it's considered one of the better levels in the game.
Oh, I didn't build the geo for this one or Escape. A different designer who was on the team before me and who left built sort of the rough geometry. My job is to populate it with gameplay. And I was actually trying really hard not to rebuild the geometry, and maybe that was even nice. There was this creative tension where I'm this isn't, because by now nobody knew how to build thief levels when we were first making this game. It was totally an experiment, and then we figured it out slowly as we went. And I think by now I kind of had the gist of it, and I really wanted to edit some of the geo, and I kind of had to make it work. And I think that kind of lent itself to a good creative tension where, I hate this spot. Look up. What the hell is that? Where we just carved our city out of a canyon wall.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's why I hate this level. Maybe it's just I'm fussy over this one moment. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair though. I see.
But as I'm watching it, I'm oh, this is kind of cool. There's cool patrol routes.
Yeah, but you're you just remember that moment. I think.
Or this one right here too.
Yeah, I think you mentioned in one of the interviews that it's hard to separate the actual experience developing a game from the finished product.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, I'll never get to play Thief.
Yeah.
The closest experience I had to playing Thief, which was really great, and I loved it, was playing Dishonored 1. Where I was oh, this is why people like Thief. Yeah, I can see that. This is a good game.
So, on that same sort of topic, are there any stealth games that you feel really live up to Thief, that do things just as well or better than Thief, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I mean, Dishonored is great. I don't know if I want to make this pure A to B qualitative comparison.
Yeah.
But Dishonored's an amazing game.
Yeah, I like Dishonored.
I played a bunch of Invisible Ink like a year or two ago. I kind of just spent an entire weekend and played like for like 24 hours or something like that. It kind of eventually wore out on me, but I was pretty impressed with it for a while, especially because that one is released as game as a service, right? So it had regular updates, and oftentimes that's difficult to do amazing game design when you have that requirement. So I was pretty impressed by it. I liked it had a different approach. I guess your marksmanship could use a little work. Huh?
Yeah, I never actually shoot this. I always jump across into the window.
Give me some candidate stealth games. Those are two that occur to me off the top of my head.
Well, when I say Thief is the best stealth game to date, the biggest one that people always mention to me as being a contender, which I've never played, is Metal Gear Solid 3. And obviously that's a very different type of stealth game.
Right.
But I'm not sure. I've never played it or seen anything about it, really.
Yeah, I can't remember if I played that one. I just remember the 45-minute cutscene at the beginning of 2, and that kind of turned me off from Metal Gear Solid games. I was like, oh, sorry, I thought I was playing a video game.
Yeah.
But I think I played 3. I can't remember. I believe that. I mean, Thief is clearly not the only super well, amazingly designed stealth game. There's lots of them out there. And in fact, as an early one, Thief like makes a whole bunch of missteps that we wouldn't go on to make in later games. How does that work?
For example, what was that?
We're looking at one right now. We talked about it. Like, sure, the monsters are equally stealth designed as the rest of the human entities, but they just don't meet the fantasy, and because of that, players have a hard time responding to them the way they do to human enemies.
Yeah, they are a little bit hard to read.
There's also this other thing too, actually, and we really wished we had tackled this better in Thief 3. We put a lot of effort into it, but the moment you're in now where you've been busted is not very fun.
Yeah, most of the people will just like load a quick save at this point.
Oh yeah, and I gave a whole GDC talk about quick save, quick load, and how they try to keep players in the experience when they know that they can reload to a point that's more fun for them. Like how to get players to like, and this is kind of before. There's now a mentality where people are just used to being stuck in the experience. Like even if something goes bad, it's like, well, here I am. I'm going to continue from here. But I gave that GDC talk because I had seen it so much in the Thief series, and it's partially because it's very easy to quick save during Thief, and then the moment when you're being chased because you've been caught is just not fun. It's not a good moment, and so it's just easier to be like, let's pretend I never got caught. How would that go instead of playing out the story if you've been caught?
What
And
do you
partially,
think
there's a lot of reasons for that. Like one of them is the fact that it's hard to suspend your disbelief that the world should continue being the state that it's in after you get away from being chased.
Yeah.
Like, I guess all the guards at Baffers just went back to work, even though 2 of them are dead and laying on the floor in front of them. They know for a fact that a thief is here because they saw me, Well, I just get another chance at breaking in. It just doesn't feel like a genuine... It's not the story that you wanted to tell.
Yeah, that's true. So what do you feel like would
reload?
be a better solution? How do you think that could be solved?
Well, we worked a lot on this kind of stuff in T3, and that's why there's extra tools that are sort of about getting away. Like, there's a whole new model that's supposed to be more fun for fleeing. And since then, that game was released in 2004. Since then, I've seen quite a bit more games that have a fun time with fleeing or running away and stuff, where you you do running jumps over obstacles and stuff like that. A lot of stealth games, when you get caught, they just instantly fail you and you reload. Are you guys fighting each other?
Yes, these guys have been in a big old brawl. Everything dead.
Do they just like to fight each other, or did something happen?
I think it's because I baited them into hitting each other by accident.
Excellent. See, I forgot that feature existed.
Yeah, I think the AI has like a primitive sort of like teams system.
Yeah, totally. No, you can call it primitive, but it's probably the same one that's in all games.
Well, yeah, fair. I just mean it's very, very simple, as in like team 1 will fight these guys if threatened, or will fight these guys if seen, stuff like that.
So these games that fail you the second you lose, like on one hand, that seems severe, and on the other hand, like, okay, well, you're just playing the part of the game that's fun. There's a pretty good story about this moment where somebody ran out of fire arrows and couldn't go through that secret door. Because you have to go through that secret door? You do,
yes,
right?
That's where the ending is of this level. Because you can go find the Haunted Cathedral, but there's actually no point in normal difficulty, at least.
Yeah.
Because the eye just tells you to go to that area over there.
Yep. I mean, that's a point. It's a point. Okay, anyway. Oh, look, it's my cathedral.
Well, yeah, but technically, no point for the conflicted level if you know what you're doing, I guess, is all I meant.
I think the reason that there's a steep staircase leading to Cathedral is to constrain sightlines, if I remember correctly. That was it didn't used to be like that, and we added that to solve problems. It's probably also the reason why there's this egregious wall to your right.
Oh yeah, hello.
Like, I'm just this, wall the size of a cathedral.
Possible to clip in here. It's very hard because this wall is thick, and you have to use this window.
Anyway, we ran out of fire arrows and couldn't beat the level, but then he found a mine, or he came in with a mine, and he set it underneath those torches, and he hit it with an arrow, and then that causes the torches to light. So he found this cool workaround.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. He's very chatty.
Yeah. One other thing I was gonna say back when I was on Escape, I forgot to do this because we got off on roguelikes and all kinds of other stuff. Very quick thing.
Yeah, I really should just play it sometimes. I thought about playing it and streaming it and have it like everybody in your community like laugh at how competent I am at it.
That would be really cool. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, the one I really want to stream is Thief 3 because that's the one I directed, and just really see. It was still early enough in my career that I'm sure I made plenty of missteps and like what I would have done differently. What are we gonna do here? What's going on?
What is this fruit? What is it? It's just called fruit.
It's fruit. It might be a plum.
Team plum.
What's the question about the fruit?
Well, we've got a lot of questions about this fruit. Really, some people say it's a plum. Some people say it's a clump of grapes. Some people say it's an eggplant.
Grapes and eggplant. No.
A magic healing fruit.
Magic healing fruit closer. Yep. I'm gonna rank these in order.
Okay.
Magic healing fruit top, plum second, clump of grapes third, eggplant fourth.
Okay. Definitely not an eggplant then. Cool.
I mean, it's the colors are very eggplanty.
True.
I think it's a healing fruit. I think it's even in the design document for this level.
Yes.
Man, how much would the community like it if I looked through ancient hard drives and found the design documentation for Thief 1? Probably a lot. I bet I have it.
That would be cool.
It's the kind of thing I would have.
Yeah. What else were we talking about? Oh yeah, we were talking about you possibly like playing through the game and streaming or recording it.
Yeah, like just
That'd be
one
really
thing.
cool.
I remember remembering. So there was a moment when we thought about making Thief 1 work on a contemporary console at the time, right? So I think it was GameCube. No, it was it GameCube? It was GameCube.
I know there was so that one of the guesses for why New Dark exists is it's a version of a Dreamcast port, I think, a potential Dreamcast port of Thief 2, I think, was it?
I mean, it doesn't sound impossible. I remember distinctly though that we petitioned Nintendo. There was some effort to get it on the current Nintendo console.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we had to get approval from Nintendo and didn't, or if we were looking for a port team and couldn't find one. I can't remember exactly what happened. But there was this effort, we're thinking about like, okay, how do you get all these controls and map them down to a controller? And so then for Thief 3, when from the beginning we were talking about being on the Xbox, I remember being like, cool, we can totally do this. I'm going to streamline the controls. And I thought it was streamline controls. And then I when I play it by modern standards, I'm like, oh my god, the game's not that complicated. Like, you literally mapped every button on this enormous, ridiculous Xbox 360 controller. Like, that is not streamlined, So just like as one example, like if I was to go back and play the Dark Project, or not the Dark Project, but Deadly Shadows, I don't know. I'm curious about what I would think about it. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember what we really wanted to do.
Yeah, controversial opinion here. I like Thief 3 more than Thief 2, and I like Thief 1 more than Thief 3. So Thief 2 is actually my least favorite of the bunch, which is most people's favorite.
Yeah, why is that true for you? That actually I don't totally disagree with that. Why is that true for you?
So for me, it's the same reason most people like Thief 2, I think, which is that I like these friends, and I like he sort of stabbed me, and I like the monsters, and I like the magic, and a lot of that was kind of toned down a lot in Thief 2.
I go back and forth, and on one hand, I think that obviously zombies and monsters have a certain jarring quality with fantasy that Thief was seen to present of being a thief.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, it's a pretty fun swashbuckling adventure.
Yeah.
You know, like there's moments where you like descend into Bone Horde or creep around these woodsy trees that feel very fun. In Thief 2, we just like really pinned the needle over in like humans and, you know, city type stuff. And we kind of tried to ease up on that for Thief 3, where we're doing a little bit of a mix. I think you know, I was one of the major people pushing in this direction. Not that I was the decision maker, but I totally agreed with everything those directions I just said for the products. And I think I kind of learned our lesson, like we pendulumed, and that's not a good idea creatively. You shouldn't pendulum. You should know where your center is from the beginning and stick with it.
I actually think though that in the context, I've got stuck here. So this is a problem of the snowman, as you call it.
Yeah, it's because that's a very sharp piece of geometry.
Yeah.
It is a known bug too.
Yep. What was I saying? I think in the context of the full trilogy, though, that sort of pendulum actually works kind of well because, you know, as you're saying, in Thief 1, it's very, very magical and a descent into chaos, and in Thief 2, it tones back a lot and goes very,
cool, the
very grounded.
It makes sense that the hammers would be more city-oriented and human-oriented.
Yeah, and then in Thief 3, it's kind of a mix because it sort of toned back that toning down a bit. And you get this kind of, this really interesting kind of story. I'm not sure I'd call it a story, but this thing in the trilogy where the first game is very, very much about the pagans and what happens when the pagans and magic and chaos gets too strong, and the second game is very much about what happens when the Hammerites get too strong, and kind of upset the balance. And then the third game is more about kind of the keepers, and that works really well because the keepers are the main force in this universe trying to keep these two major factions in balance.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And, you know, what happens when the balance keepers get too powerful and they get too headstrong about their objectives.
Yeah.
And then in the end, Garrett has to be their keeper.
Yeah. It's really cool. So overall...
I mean, it was planned out from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So overall, in context of the entire trilogy, I think there's not very much that I would suggest changing about it.
Well, I'll go back in time and tell myself and the rest of the team that. So we'll just continue doing what we had been doing at that time.
Yeah. Good.
No, I mean, you know, it's there's never been a creative project that I didn't want to spend an extra gigantic chunk of time making even better. But certainly this is one of the ones that they came out well. Like, you know, it's kind of got enough sloppiness in it that it's hard to point at a specific spot and be like, this is what should have been improved. You know, instead it's sort of like, well, as a whole, you know, there's little bits and pieces, but as a whole, it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is my favorite game.
Oh, wow. Full stop?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, before I joined Looking Glass, System Shock was my favorite game, full stop.
I haven't finished System Shock 1 yet, but I've actually been playing it recently. And I'm really enjoying it as well. It has a good bit of the same reason that I like Thief.
And also, like, it's important to know there's nothing like System Shock that existed when System Shock was released the same year that Doom? Is it Doom? No, or is it even?
It was 1994, I think, was it?
Yeah, it was 94. So it was Wolf 3D was 92. So it was Doom, I believe. So like, the bleeding edge of video games at the time was one with this amazing fluid 60 frames a second graphics and super, you know, very fun, very engaging shooter gameplay, and this clunky, slow, fussy, you know, space shuttle cockpit overloaded user interface game that was like enormous on player freedom and open world and lots of different affordances and a very immersive story. You know, like those were like the two heads of, you know, this part of the games industry at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so System Shock really set the stage for a lot of what we're looking at. And also, incidentally, System Shock was created from an empty hard drive in 9 months. Like 9 months from empty hard drive to store shelves or something like that.
I think I've heard that before, but I forgot about it. Yeah, that's crazy.
Right. So it was my favorite game because it was such a revolution in what games could be.
Mm-hmm.
Both the immersion. That guy's face is so flat. The immersion and this idea that you could really just tactically own the experience yourself and really create your own, you know, player emergent narrative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I played both of them. I liked both of them, but you know, System Shock was the one that was a revolution for me.
Yeah. How do you feel about System Shock 2? I haven't played that one yet because I'm waiting until I finish System Shock 1.
Yeah, I worked on it a little tiny bit. It's great, amazing.
Sweet.
The System Shock one is a slightly more pure fiction for me, where you're just, it's very sci-fi cyberpunk. And Shock 2 has a little bit more like spirituality and weird, ghosts from the past kind of stuff, and it's cool. It moved away, and also like it's more of an RPG character progression sort of a thing, which in some senses I like to just be told who my character is. Like, now you've got this power, use it. Like, kind of, as opposed to like, well, do you want this one or that one? Oh, better save up enough points for this other one. I'm just like, I don't know, just give me some powers. So I think System Shock 1 just is, the game mechanics are more pure to my heart. The user interface is very clunky on one. What are those things in that second cell over there? What's going on?
This is the these are the talismans that let you get into the cathedral.
They look like fuzzy pets. Oh yeah, I see now.
They've got magical barriers protecting them. You have to say a prayer to it to make them open.
Just like real life.
Yeah, it's very realistic.
This is one of the levels I played the absolute least. I'm allowed to ask a question.
I think this is a really cool level because it has this weird kind of social stealth that wasn't the game wasn't really designed for, but it works out.
It's all faked with scripting.
Yeah.
The big amount of scripts, and it was hard to keep it functional.
Yeah.
Because like the scripts are making a bunch of assumptions, and you could be like, well, what if I kill somebody when no one's looking, but then I put their body here, but then I also do this other thing. It's like, I guess we have to add another script.
Yeah, here's a funny detail, I think. So if these guys see you pull this lever over here, they don't like it. But I think if you flash them and then pull it, I don't think they know.
Yeah, well, how could they see it?
Yeah.
They'd be like, you're not an intruder. We're just
the alarm did just get tripped.
Oh, okay.
People over here heard the flash bomb, I think. Oh, no, they knew. I think they just knew I flashed them, though.
Right. They didn't know that you pulled the lever? Why would they?
Yeah.
They were blind at the time. This is a Dorian Hart level, if I remember correctly.
I think so, yeah. I need to remember the level designers. A lot of people in the community know all the levels and designers and stuff by heart.
Dorian also did backwards. I just want to point out, like, again, per my story of like someone else built the Geo and I did the gameplay and Eric did sound, and also like, and also we all got handed mission briefs that we had to, like, it's very much a collaborative.
Yeah. Here's how you know it's Dorian Hart.
I was very happy as a 24-year-old to see that I got my own picture, and I was very nice secret room.
Yeah. He had lots of these little rooms just in the middle of geometry for no reason that I can tell.
This spends no rendering effort whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't get rendered most of the time. It's just, I don't think. Oh, he might have had it as his blue room. Do you guys know about, or green room? Do you guys know about green room?
I have a vague idea.
Yeah. Anyway, so I liked having my name associated with levels, but the truth is, like, they were sort of my levels. I mean, I babied them, and I had a lot of creative love for them, but the whole team worked on them and cared for them as well.
Yeah.
So this is a Dorian level. It's got his DNA in it, but it's also the whole team's level. Yeah, the green room is just what you saw. It's, like, not connected to the level, but it is actual simulated space that entities can exist in, and what you do if something's gonna be teleported into the game at some point, like, oh, the alarm got tripped and so there's 5 new guards or whatever, like, you can spawn guards at runtime, but that causes a lot of problems, especially on these old computers. You can run out of memory, you can have performance hitches, the game can be surprised that suddenly there's new entities in the game, like, all this stuff can happen. So what you do is you create they exist from the beginning of the game. They're taking up CPU cycles, not very many because they're not doing much. They're getting rendering calls, which they probably ignore because they're off screen, whatever. But they're part of the regular game cycle, and they're just sitting in, So the life of these guys are just like hanging out in this room, no way out. It's all just blank walls. It's dark, and then when it's time, they get teleported in, as opposed to trying to spawn them and set all the properties correctly and all these other things that are difficult.
So it might be
unrelated.
That
might have been a green room.
It might be unrelated, but here's a sort of theory I have about this room. So this bit of level actually shows up in 2 different missions. That is Undercover and Strange Bedfellows. Strange Bedfellows being the second to last level in the game.
Yep.
Now, in Strange Bedfellows, you descend down into the under bits of this temple by a ladder over here. right under this area. And that big room is right under here. So I suspect that it's something related to that.
Yeah, it's like the proto version of that level, or the stub to it, or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's the same geometry for both levels, and we're not exactly the same, but it's based on the same.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that you do, right? We talked a little earlier about how you make a draft of the game, and you're playing it, and you revise it, whatever. Is this strange, bedfellows?
Yes, this is.
Bad things have happened. That's why
Everything's broken.
Yeah, what a bummer. So you make the core, you make the rough geo, you play test the gameplay, and then you go and improve and polish the visuals. But if you have two levels that inherit from the same geometry, when you do the polish pass, you don't want to do it twice. You want to do it just once and sort of copy paste it, or just have the other level know to get the polish pass. It's a little different in this case, of course, because the polish pass is different. Ooh, pink. That's
yeah, purple letters. I don't know why it looks kind of textureless.
Yeah, when things don't have textures, they're pink. Maybe that is not really a ladder, and it's just built. Anyway, whatever.
Could be.
Right. So probably what happened is they did the copy paste over the geometry and then deleted one giant chunk of it and added this other stuff. So that one brush that's left over is like the one that didn't get deleted.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a reason I actually came into this level. And that's to show that I can go into the same room here too. Where's the ladder? Oh, I think I'm lost. Oh my. Hello, friends. There's a lot of friends here.
Yeah, a lot of friends. There's this moment when I remember when I was working on Thief 2, I was working on the bank level, which was one of my baby levels of Thief 2. And there's like when you're still outside the bank, there's like these tunnels that connect these outbuildings, and so you can kind of like, they afford you different access points to the level, so you can decide if you want to go on the front or the side or whatever. And I just remember dressing up, like the tunnels are very functional to me in my mind. It's like, who cares what this tunnel looks like? The point is you're supposed to go from point A to point B. You're just moving through space. And I remember dressing it up. Yep, there it is. I remember dressing up my tunnels with some objects and trying to tell a story about why this tunnel exists. And I just remember being like, wow, I just spent like 10 hours on this tunnel that it's intended that people are going to move through it in 30 seconds. Like, I just put this prop on the ground that no one's ever going to look at. And this like disproportion between how much effort you spend to make something versus how much time people spend experiencing it.
Yeah.
And now watching you guys, like, well, you guys know all these levels so much better than we ever did, and you've experienced every single little creative decision we made in excruciating detail. So the ratio over the decades, the ratio has swung back around in the other direction. Yeah,
absolutely. We've put in a ton of time into just trying to break this game as much as possible. So anything that could be put towards our goal of just getting through the level faster, we've just poured over.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, people. You mentioned banks, so people in the chat are asking about a door in bank that you can just blow up, and I don't actually know where the door is. I could probably open that up. Like I could open up Thief 2 right now, and go there. But I don't remember what people in chat tell me about blowing open that door. Did that? Oh yeah, the spider shoots magic missiles. Forgot about that.
He shoots magic missiles.
Yeah, that's what these projectiles are called. I've made friends that shoot magic missiles.
Well, he's a special red wizard spider, so.
Yeah. Oh, he's also got projectile webs. I forgot these spiders were on this level.
Well, there's a weird game mechanic right there, huh?
Yeah, you've got these webs that you have to drop on the ground as if you're like peeling the webs away from you. Before you can do any actions. It's really cool.
I've seen worse game mechanics.
So yeah, apparently on the release version of Thief 2, the big bank vault door you can just blow open.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, not my finest game design moment. Obviously, the spirit of the bank, the spirit of all Thief levels is it's less in getting to the objective and picking it up. Like, stealing something is not actually fun. You just put it in front of your cursor, you right-click, right?
Yeah.
And this, and so instead it's the journey to the point where you get to do that. And this is very much the philosophy of Bank. Bank is all about trying to wend your way through this enormous, labyrinthine building with full of security to get to the vault and the various waypoints you have to also go to before you get to the vault. And if you do all that stuff, and my feeling was like, cool, all right, well, now you can have the vault. And there was obviously this like combination thing that I made that was supposed to be like this extra step, and it was really just kind of a fictional step. Like you could find the combination, I think, or you could solve the puzzle. It was kind of like this little how to get all the knobs depressed puzzle. Is this ringing a bell?
Yeah.
Right, that's how you get into the vault.
Yeah.
I remember I designed it and tested it with some people, and it was like working okay, but there's just too many people who didn't get it, or like it wasn't so expertly designed that it was like trivial to avoid getting in a bad state, or so I just remember like I was like, well, whatever, the point is you got to the vault, and I made it so that if you just like click on it enough times it would just open for you.
Yeah. And
of course I put the Easter egg in about the time vault. Do people know about that, the time lock on the vault?
Chat, do people know about that? I don't actually know that much about Thief 2. I haven't speed run it yet. I plan to eventually, but I haven't got there.
It's a really deep Easter egg I put in the game, where it's described as a time vault, and so it's sort of like, this thing is going to open up in the morning, but I got to open up before then. So
yeah,
if you actually just leave the game running for, I think, 12 hours, the vault will open up.
That's awesome. I love little bits like that. One of the Far Cry games I heard had something like that, where at the beginning of the game there's a goal where you have to just like wait for like, a guy leaves and says, wait 20 minutes and I'll be back. And the intention is that you decide, well, I'm not waiting 20 minutes, and you go and do something else. But if you do, then the game just ends.
Yeah. Anyway, I say it wasn't my favorite, my proudest moment in game design, because like I just sort of punched it, right? I was sort of like, well, the idea is you're supposed to get to the vault, and yeah, I could have designed a good puzzle, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Just click it 100 times, or you just wait for 12 hours, it'll open. And some people probably solve I assume most people solve the puzzle, and it's like slightly frustrated. I just didn't want anybody to be frustrated solving the puzzle, because that's not the game.
Yeah, some fan missions do like really hard puzzles, and people there's like a big split of like people who really like to be challenged by puzzles, and people who aren't as good at puzzles, who are like, this didn't do it for me.
Yep. What are you up to here?
Oh, I don't know, actually. I'm just sort of chatting. There's one thing I kind of wanted to...
Let's go back and look at that picture.
Alright. One second, let me beat this guy up.
He's an expert swordsman. You see that swing?
Yeah. There we go. He's down. Alright. It's one blurry picture.
It's beautiful.
Impressive how they painted all those pixels in.
Yeah, they had to make it look vintage.
Yeah.
Just checking to see if it's anybody we knew. You never know.
Yeah.
Looks like public domain to me.
Yeah, there are a lot of paintings in this game. Some of them are really weird. I'm trying to think of where I could go to easily find a couple.
An awful lot.
Actually, downstairs.
An awful lot of the art of the game, like meaning the big textures that we're looking at, was captured by Mark Lazat on his trip to Europe before the game started, or during the development of the game. And he went there with a camera, and digital cameras didn't or barely existed at the time, so it was a film camera, and he shot like a whole bunch of rolls of texture acquisition. So these aren't just like somebody randomly painted these textures you're looking at. They're actually physical textures.
Yeah, that's cool.
And
they have to do good selection of the paintings.
Yeah. Little gallery. Beautiful.
Very nice. It's a banner. It's not.
The tapestries. That's good. Look at that. Reserved palette.
That's very fantasy.
Yeah, that's pretty Borisy. Who knows? that doesn't quite fit.
Yeah.
Oh, that one was on the wall. That last one was on the wall. It wasn't glass.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I can't remember. Not this one, but the one to the left.
Wait, this? Where?
No, it's all the way to the left from where you are. I'm a 3 second delay.
Okay. Here.
Delay lag for you. That one. That one.
Put your hands on your head.
This looks looks very trickster.
Yeah, it was.
There's a lot of little subtle details in this game that kind of point towards the trickster angle, and like the beginnings of levels, how they have these little pagan writings and stuff like that. And I realized after playing through the game that it had been hinting for a long time at the magical elements of the game. Like from the very beginning, it's in your face. Like, hey, there's magical weird stuff happening here. But I never suspected that I'd see it. The game kind of hid it away until you got a bit into the game.
Yeah.
So it was really cool, really well done.
Yeah, I really like it. I really like Bonehorde as being like kind of the first example of that, where you're, one of the things I always think about video game fiction is like, or just general RPGs, is like we've really lost the notion of dungeons. Like apparently we believe in the ecosystems of holes in the ground with long winding corridors that define plenty of negative space, just like these rambling intestines of corridors, where monsters go to live and sit on top of piles of gold. Like that's a thing that we apparently believe in, like this Diablo notion of like, that's totally normal, that like monsters will all collect all different types and they would just go into these underground tunnels and just live there with some gold. So in case any hero wants to come by and kill them and take their gold.
Well, and they just enjoy having it.
Yeah, they just this is what monsters do. And Bonehorde really like helped anchor that better. Where sure, it's clearly a dungeon, but on the other hand, you get to have this fun experience of breaking in. It's a tomb and it has fiction and it's very consistent internally. A lot of that stuff I think is fun.
Yeah.
So it's Garrett's a little bit like Indiana Jones. Like you're playing this adventurer who's swashbuckling his way through the story, and his superpowers happen to be stealth and sneakiness and stealing things. But he's going on these like very exotic locations and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I think a good bit of the humor in this game, the dark kind of goofy humor as well, is really amplified by Garrett's whole attitude about the whole thing.
Yeah, totally.
There's nothing that surprises Garrett. There's nothing that freaks him out. He just plays the straight man 100% of the time.
Yep.
So
he gets a little hot under the collar once in a while.
Yeah. So people in the chat keep bringing up Dewdrop, which is a bit of a meme. Do you know what Dewdrop is off the top of your head, or?
Nope.
Okay. Then just as an explanation, Dewdrop is a little doll in one mission of Thief 2, in Trail of Blood specifically.
Oh yeah. Dewdrop.
It's given to you as a little as a gift by a little ghost girl.
Yep.
And there are a lot of memes now related to that. I don't know why Dewdrop got so popular. But
that's
somebody asked who came up with Dewdrop.
That's Terry Brocious, I'm sure. I've collaborated with Terry Brocious on like almost every video game I've worked on. She's one of my favorite collaborators, amazing world builder, dialogue writer, character designer, and so forth. Very much on the fiction and story side, and that level was a collaboration between her and Jen. What is Jennifer's last name? I can go look her up on Instagram so I get her right.
Okay.
And that's definitely Dewdrop as the doll of a pagan child is definitely something Terry Brocious would do.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Habroda Lesser, Jennifer Habroda Lesser was the artist who that level really sang. I remember as a takeaway for us was like, hey, it's a really good idea to pair artists and designers together to create a holistic vision.
Yeah. This level is a little bit unique in that there's like almost no objects in this level. It's pretty much all brushes and enemies. Because there are a lot of things we can do with objects like flings or just other exploits, and we always are like, we find a new exploit and we're like, okay, that'll be great on Lost City, but where do we find an object?
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It's a Mike Ryan joint, this one is, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
He was very technical, really liked to get his brushes right. Maybe he spent less time sort of doing the set decoration, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. It's a very, very big level physically. So there's probably a good bit of time that went into just sort of doing the brushwork to detail this stuff.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So one other thing I was going to talk about when I was back in Baffords is another controversial opinion of mine, and that is that, to put it quite simply, the blackjack is too strong, and I have the same problem in Dishonored with the sleep darts and stuff, and the choking people out. I think that it's too easy to clear a level of threats, and I think there was there was an attempt, I guess, a sort of beginnings of an attempt to balance this out by, well, on expert, for example, you can't kill anyone, and there are other downsides, like killing or attacking someone leaves blood on the ground, and other people will find that blood. But blackjacking someone is just better than killing them at all times, and you're not restricted from doing it in expert. So this sort of distinction between killing someone or blackjacking them doesn't really matter. So I'm not sure what you think about that whole situation, the blackjack and dealing with threats and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I had actually very similar concerns during Thief. I remember I was not a fan of the idea that when you flash bomb somebody, you can then blackjack them for free. As like, well, for two reasons. One is because it makes the blackjack super powerful. And then two, and the blackjack is supposed to be the finesse weapon, not the like clean house weapon, right?
Yeah.
So it creates, if you guys have probably done this, but you can do this thing where you like round up a crap load of guards who are chasing you, and then use just the flash bombs really well, or enough of them, and then just knock them all out, right?
Yeah.
And like, so anyway, so that's not the spirit of the blackjack. The blackjack is supposed to be this like finesse weapon. And then also because of what we talked about earlier, like I really wanted to motivate players to have a fun getaway experience, but a fun getaway experience with the blackjack or the flash bomb seems exactly right. Like, cool, I'm just gonna blind, it's ninja style. I'm gonna blind everybody with my smoke bomb, and then when they open their eyes, I'm gone. I've disappeared, right?
Yeah.
But there's no reason to do that. Once you blackjack them, you might as well, or flash bomb them, you might as well blackjack them too.
Yeah.
So I was sad about that. That's because there's the sky is actually, you guys probably already know this, the sky is a polygon.
Yeah.
You can't jump there because there's a physical polygon above you. Like the fact that it looks like that. And also there's some exploits that you saw where like you can still blackjack people even though you're in a dark shadow or whatever. Even though when you're in a dark shadow, even though they're trying to fight you. Yeah. So yeah, I think I think I pushed on this in Thief 3 where the spirit of the blackjack is very much about if you've successfully snuck up on somebody, then you get to take them out silently in one hit. And that's all it's for. It's a reward for being excellent at stealth, and it isn't coupled with other tools. Yeah. What are you gonna do? You gonna jump in that water?
Yeah, sure. Sploosh.
Did you take damage?
I did not.
Can you take damage if you jump in the shallow water?
Yes, actually, you can. I think. Wait, can you? I'm now thinking to a level from Thief Gold Song in the Caverns, where there's a fling you can do while in shallow water, and you can die during it. But I think that's only because you can come out of the water just enough to hit the wall while out of the water. So I think no, I don't think you can take damage or fall damage while in water.
Just like real life.
Yeah, of course.
Also, I'm
Jump
pretty sure that
deep water. You're good.
That swimming pool is period appropriate contemporary.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Only the best.
Only the best. You'd have a swimming pool, of course. It wouldn't just be a fountain.
Oh, good point. Someone in the chat just said that they've killed themselves in Crag's Cleft water. Let's see if I can make that happen. Oops, I double-clicked. What
is the most fun level to speedrun?
Most fun level to speedrun? Ooh, that's a good question. Let me take a look at the list of levels here.
And the follow-up question is, what is the least fun level to speedrun?
That one's probably an easier question. I think Assassins is generally regarded as the least fun to speedrun.
Right, because it forces you into certain checkpoints.
Well, the way we do Assassins is kind of weird. But yeah, it does do some annoying stuff. So we blackjack this guy, which you're not supposed to be able to do, and then just carry him to the objective, which is kind of slow. But
carrying bodies isn't exactly action-packed.
Yeah, it's way faster than actually following them to the objective, though. But when we get there, there's a whole lot of annoying stuff, and this run has evolved a lot over just the time I've been speedrunning it. So in New Dark, this bug here that I'm doing right now is fixed, so they have to actually manipulate the AI to make them come this way. So that's really annoying. That's definitely the least fun level to speedrun. In Old Dark, it's a bit more of a toss-up, I think. But there are some really annoying things in this level in Old Dark still. That fling right there took me so long to get it set up.
Did you just fling off the door?
Yeah, I did one of those little tension between the snowman bits.
Oh yeah.
Lean around the door. Ooh, so that guy hit me and made me stand up, which flung me.
So you can just pull off the fling on any physical object.
Yeah, anything that is an object and not a brush.
Right. I wonder why it works that way.
I don't know actually.
I'm sure they just must have different physics representations.
Yeah, I think it's that your head can't go into brushes. It's just not possible. But your head can go into objects if you do it right. So when your head goes into an object, the object doesn't want you there, and it sort of rejects you.
The two physical objects are penetrating. I see.
Yeah. That's why we think flings work. What was I saying though? Oh, so yeah. So not dwelling on the least favorite, another contender is Strange Bedfellows, which has also a lot of annoying tricks to it, and requires carrying a body. The most fun level to speedrun is Maw of Chaos is up there because it's just big long areas for bunny hopping and doing like big movement tricks. But at the end of a run, it's the last level, it's at the very end. It's really, really stressful sometimes to do it because it's not a hard level, but some of the tricks can really get you if you're not prepared. So if you're sort of freaking out at the end of a really good run, it's just like, how do I even bunny hop anymore?
Which one takes the longest?
Ooh, the longest run. I think that's Maw of Chaos still, because it has a here I'll go through the level real quick. It has at the very end a wait time, because at the end of the game you have this ritual you have to wait for the trickster to do, and at the end of it he blows up because you swapped out the eye with a fake booby-trapped eye.
Just like real life.
Yeah, of course. All this is very realistic. There's no way to actually skip that entire thing. He still has to walk between all of the pedestals and do his little ritual.
Right.
But what we have figured out how to skip is the dialogue. So when he normally goes to each pedestal, he does a little poem or magic spell or something, and it takes like 10 seconds for him to do his entire line, and then he slowly waddles over to the next one. But if we stand, so in this game the way sound works is the room brushes that you have to have placed everywhere for sound to propagate.
I sure do.
And if you, I'm sure it was very fun. I enjoy it, certainly. When you're outside a room brush, obviously there is no sound. It can't propagate to you or work at all.
Yep.
And there is an area right at the end of this level, conveniently, where there is no room brush.
So you start stalking and then you leave the room database and then you stop stalking?
Well, yeah, we get him started on his ritual, and then we step into the room brushless area, and so every time he walks up to his next pedestal, he just sort of walks up and then walks away because he thinks he's done his dialogue already.
Right. Yep.
So
he gets a callback that the dialogue has ended. He doesn't know why the dialogue ended.
Yeah, so he just moves on. Oh, this is a weird one to do with the movement states as well. This is a ladder technically, and if you drop an item while in front of you while on a ladder, you get the walking speed. I don't know why that triggers it specifically, but it just does. Similar thing, if you climb on a ladder while underwater, you get walking speed while in the water.
Fun.
What was I saying? So yeah, the trick at the end of this level saves a good few minutes, but it doesn't cut it all out. So this is still the longest level, I think. Because it's kind of a long level already before you get to the end.
Yeah.
This is a fun trick. So as we discussed before, the items all have physical presences. And what I'm about to do is I'm going to jump down here. There's a hole there that you're not supposed to be able to get into. I'm going to jump down here. Then I'm going to I'm going to throw this mine below me. And this mine and the mine in my inventory, nice work, friend. The mine in my inventory are going to collide. And then I can jump off of that stack of 2 mines.
Yep.
So even though I only threw one, the other one still collided with it. Because this game is weird.
Yeah.
And we know that because if you drop one mine and you don't have another one in your inventory, then it just doesn't work.
Interesting.
Also, if you drop down into the lava here, I don't have enough HP for this. Let me drink a potion. If you drop down into the lava, and then quick save and quick load, well, now lava's safe.
Wow.
But if you jump, you die.
So you have to survive your first contact with the lava and then quick save and quick load?
Yeah.
Quick save and then quick load.
I bet you guys found quite a few bugs with this quick loading system.
Yeah. I think there's a few. So mostly, like I said, a save file is just the exact contents of the level. Like it's literally the entire level.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple things that have to happen when you reload, where you set Garrett into particular states or whatever. Like the game can't just pick up execution at any state. It has some assumptions that it needs to work from.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of like resetting Garrett that happens at the beginning of loading from a save state. So probably what happens is Garrett has passed through the boundary where he should know that he's in lava and continue taking damage, but then when it reloads, it just didn't do that check all over again.
Yeah. So I was pretty slow here, so he's gonna walk over to this next thing and do his ritual. I only have one moss arrow. I forgot to think of another. Oh, he noticed me. He turns all this into damaging crystal, so you can't get out. That's kind of a fun detail.
Yeah, bummer. What is the fastest level of Speedrunning?
The fastest level is one of your levels, in fact. Return to the Cathedral.
Oh yeah?
I believe the world record for this. What is it now, guys? Is it like 14 seconds? Something ridiculous like that?
Wow.
So what we do is we run up to this door and we go straight through it. That's actually a really annoying cliff to go through. Takes a lot of time to set that up.
Yeah.
And then you go through this door. Now you're in the actual cathedral itself. Got flash bombs so these guys don't bother you. You jump on the speed potion to get up to this eye. Then you drink it. You go through this door. Oh, and here's the thing people do now. You use a fire arrow to make this door open faster.
Okay.
And then I can't do this. I'm not good enough at this. But the fastest way is to throw. I don't even have a mine. The fastest way is to throw a mine at that wall and then shoot a fire arrow at it, and then that combination blows you up into the trigger there, and you die.
Nice.
So it takes like 14 seconds.
Cool. Is there a contender for 14 seconds? 14, 15 seconds?
What do you mean?
What's the next one? The next longest?
Next longest. I'm not sure about that off the top of my head. Oh yeah, next longest is, or next shortest, however you want to phrase that, is Bafford's.
What's the time record there?
Yeah, I think it's like somewhere around the range of 19 seconds.
Wow.
20 something, somewhere around there. Because we go straight into here, and then we clip into the staircase over here, and then we're like right next to the throne room. I always take a bath here by accident. It's actually really hard to jump off that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go through this wall, which is really annoying to clip through. Die, and then hope that guy doesn't block you. 21 seconds on Bafford's is the record. That one took me 35 seconds just there.
Impressive. Nice.
Yeah, so there are some really short levels in this game. There are also levels that have changed slightly because of Thief Gold, like in Thief Gold, Lost City is much shorter than it is in Dark Project, because in Dark Project you have to go all the way toward the very back of the level to get one of the talismans, but in Gold, some of the talismans were moved to new Gold levels, so Lost City became a lot shorter.
Interesting. Cool. Is there one that has changed the most over the time that you guys have been speedrunning them?
Ooh, that's a good question. Changed the most. So they've all changed. For example, when we discovered gentle clipping, the clip through the walls, named after a guy called Mr. Gentle, who kind of appeared, showed us the clip, and then left, pretty much.
He was a spirit.
Yeah. That when we discovered that clip, it kind of made us reroute everything, because being able to go through walls suddenly changes everything up a lot.
Totally.
So we spent probably a couple weeks just finding new clips and testing the clips we have and routing, and so a lot of the levels changed. Like, most of them changed quite significantly. The ones that didn't change very much are like my favorite level in this game, the sword. Now I'll go into this level to demonstrate for a second. In this level, most of the walls are very thick, and it's also a very vertical level. So, excuse me, friends. So yeah, these walls are just ginormous. So there's not really much you can clip through. Like, I thought maybe we could clip through here because there's a bit of loot we need in there, but you just can't clip this. Too thick. So I guess tip for people designing missions in Drama who don't want people to clip through their walls: make thick walls.
Yeah, well, I mean, they should be thick.
Yeah. What else was I saying? Yeah, oh yeah, seeing... Was that...
better look when they're thick anyway.
Yeah, I agree. One other thing these guys made me remember is the big fan theory is that these guys are actually 8 beasts, because the 8 beast model appears to be wearing a sort of torn, tattered version of this uniform.
I will affirm that. That is correct.
So my theory and the general community theory that I've heard kind of differs a bit. My theory is that, as we've seen, creatures native to the Maw of Chaos, like Victoria and Constantine, have the ability to shapeshift. So I suspect these guys are just 8 beasts from the Maw of Chaos that have shapeshifted into humans. The other thing I've heard is people suspect that they were normal humans who have been transformed into 8 beasts.
Oh, I see. So you know that they're the same thing as 8 beasts. You're just wondering how they'd come to be 8 beasts.
Yeah. That's where the sort of disagreement comes in.
Well,
of course, other people say that they're not 8 beasts at all, but denied.
Those people are denied. Yeah, I'm not going to affirm more than that.
Yeah.
Don't move.
Okay.
Cool. I gotta go pretty soon.
All right, that's fine. We've had a really good chat.
Yeah, totally. This is fun.
I guess another thing, another loose end I guess I could tie off here. When we're talking about roguelikes, I would just be curious to hear if you would recommend any roguelikes that have come out recently. If you've got any suggestions.
Come out recently? Probably not. Yeah, I wouldn't provide the names of any roguelikes. That would surprise anybody, I don't think. Spelunky's obviously a great one, but that's been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
I like some of the very low-fi graphic old ones. Like, I'm a big fan of Adom, which actually I think Adom just got like a whole more graphical release on Steam. So for like $15 you can get it with a pretty good tile set and everything.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that one's good at storytelling, and it's very good at trying to educate you every time you lose.
Yeah. One other thing someone mentioned, which I really should do, give me a moment.
Sure.
We can keep talking about this for a second. Yeah, I really like NetHack, actually. I played a good bit of NetHack.
I do also like NetHack. I'm going to go with Adom instead of NetHack just because Adom's more of a storytelling game. And NetHack's very much like a system. I also played a lot of Stone Soup. I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, I've heard people recommend that. I haven't played it yet. Alright, so currently I'm leaving the realm of mostly vanilla Thief and going into New Dark, heavily modded Thief.
Cool.
So this is I'm gonna bring up a mission from the 20th anniversary contest. Now, the rules of this contest were pretty much that we had to use the same tools pretty much that were available to you 20 years ago. So we're using Andromeda, we're using mostly stock assets. It's only stock and stock derivative, so cool. Slightly modified things. So this is a really cool look at what people with tons of experience can do with the same editor. Of course, it's also modified, so these things wouldn't have been possible back 20 years ago when you were doing it, because there were just more limitations on the engine.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like, the CPUs were slower. And our minimum spec was, I'm sure, much smaller than one would prefer to build for.
Yeah. I remember hearing about how Greg LoPiccolo said he had to rip apart a big part of Assassins because it just didn't fit within their specifications.
Yeah, Greg and I were on somebody's podcast a little while ago, and we were talking about how, because he was my boss and my first games industry boss at the time, and how he, like, I had to rebuild the Cathedral, return to Cathedral like 3 times, I think. Mm-hmm. And he was just like, dude, we have to make schedule. I'm like, yeah, but it's just, we can't ship this. Like, like, if you guys know Dromed trying to meet the minimum spec, it's like really hard to get. That's just not a space you should design.
All right, actually, I'll start a new game in this one. So this is The Sound of a Burke in a Room by a guy called Skacky. And this is my favorite fan mission. And it's cool. So this here might look a little bit familiar if you're familiar with Thieves Guild from Thief Gold. Yep. This is the start of Thieves Guild. The inside of the Thieves Guild isn't there, though. But if we go over here, then a whole new world opens up. Because there's more streets here. And
nice.
There's this incredibly detailed, complex city here with lots of guards patrolling, and all the way down there's a sort of canal system in the city, and just incredible buildings in this street. I love this street. These stairs winding down to this street down here. It's really amazing.
It's excellent.
Great build. There's a lot of stuff hidden in this level as well. Lots of rooftop pathways and just really cool stuff. So this is the sort of thing people can do nowadays. I think this one really pushes the limits of New Dark. I think he said that there's really not much else he could add to this. There's just too much here.
Nice. It's great.
Yeah. So this is what we've been doing while you were away. Ow. These guys are really annoying.
They're supposed to be.
Yeah. I would hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just... my mind was blown when I loaded into this for the first time, because this was one of the first actual, like, proper fan missions I really played through. And it's just... You look in any direction, there's so much detail.
Yeah, really excellent use of those points of light and how they're staggered at different heights and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, back when for a long time after this too, but when we were making Thief 1, in contrast to the counter example, which I already told you about with Jennifer and Terry's level in Thief 2, the pagan village level. Mm-hmm. A lot of times it was like, so I was in college, I was trained to be an engineer. I was like a computer scientist. Like, I had very little art background, but I still was like the one building the levels, right? So I was building them technically, and I was building them experientially, like for flow and for storytelling. But like I didn't have art experience. When I started working on Thief, I actually visited real life cathedrals around Boston and tried to like research architecture to do it correctly.
Yeah.
So it was kind of not the standard practice that just because you're somebody who is building levels which were naturally very visual, that you would have visual skill set. So it's kind of cool to go back with this like older technology and see it applied very much intentionally towards making the visuals good.
Yeah. Cool. Someone else asks, do you happen to have a save from the Easter egg roof? No, I don't think I do. I don't think I ever actually got there myself. Also, hello Skacky. He's in chat now.
What's up, man? Good level.
Someone else just asked if you have any favorite fan missions, if you remember any?
No, I mean, it was like shortly after. Maybe I last played them. Oh no, I remember we did a collection at the beginning of Thief 3. So this would have been about the year 2000 or 2001. We went back into the community and collected a whole bunch of levels, and like a lot of people on the team like played through the levels. Mm-hmm. So I definitely played a bunch of them, like circa 2001 or whatever, like all the things that are considered the best levels, and there's some cool stuff there.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I think Jordan Thomas, who went on to be he got the lead design credit on Thief 3, and he went on to work on the BioShock series and directed a few of them and everything. I think he made a really good fan mission, and that was part of him getting his job on the Thief team. Mm-hmm. But yeah, anyway, we played a bunch of them. But I couldn't tell you like which one by name I remember being the best or anything like that.
Yeah. I just noticed this little barbershop pole. That's cool.
Nice. It rotates.
Yeah. I didn't notice that before. So much detail. Skeki says thanks for the compliment.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right. Yeah, I think that's most of the stuff I wanted to cover. I can check all my different sources where I posted this, see if anybody has any other questions that I should ask.
Yeah, cool. Let's see if there's any final questions, and then we'll call it a night.
Yeah. Here's kind of an interesting question that it's very much in the realm of like generic questions that I assume you've probably been asked a few times, but this one stood out to me a little bit. What was your average workday like while working on Thief?
Oh my god.
Thief games.
The Looking Glass had a very flat structure, and I was a brand new designer. I was very young, and I just basically got handed the script, and there's a little bit of oversight. Like, I remember Tim, the lead designer, and Dorian, who was a senior designer who had worked on the System Shock game. I remember they reviewed some of my ideas that I was going to put in a Return to Cathedral and, like, push back on some things, which I'm grateful they pushed back on because those were not great ideas. Mm-hmm. But, honestly, most of the time I just got to come in and make my own creative decisions. I was just, it's not like someone was like, why did you build this hallway? There wasn't like weekly reviews or anything,
Yeah.
So I would just kind of, and there wasn't a lot of process. It's not like we had giant meetings about our schedules, or we didn't use Slack, Slack didn't exist. So a lot of times you would just come in and sit down on your desk and just work all day long on your level or whatever the priority was. Mm-hmm. And it depended on project phase. Like during QA, it was totally different, in the end of the project than during the middle of it and so forth. I don't know if does everybody know about the monochrome monitors that we had? So we had like one. This is all back CRT screens too, no flat screens. But we'd have like this one big color screen in front of us where we would do the actual editing, just draw them as you've seen it. And then for all of the debug and other like diagnostics view, we had this separate little monochrome monitor that was like green on black.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that thing would be continuously spewing, and you would like go stare at that to figure out why AIs were not behaving correctly or whatever.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that. Another question from someone on the Through the Looking Glass forum, which is still around, perhaps surprisingly.
Hanging on.
Yep. Have you seen the Dark mod in Thief 2X?
Yeah. I've followed a little bit of all these different mods and engines and stuff. I think I don't always remember which one is which by name, but yeah.
Yeah. The Dark mod is one that reminds me very much of Thief 3, actually. Just with, the mechanics do. It's just a bit more polished, perhaps.
Yeah. It's very humbling and inspiring to see how much life that these games still have in them after all these years. So I'm very grateful to the community, and I think it's super cool what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Another random question from the same Through the Looking Glass forum thread is, and this one I don't think it will have happened, but I wouldn't be surprised with the way development was for games back then. Did you voice any characters from any of the games at all?
Well, obviously, if you go to IMDb and look up Randy Smith 3, you will get your answers. Actually, I think I may no longer be Randy Smith 3 in IMDb. I think they renumbered us. Like for a while it was just chronological, and then they're like, no, not some random video game developer. We got to put these in importance order. Anyway, so I'm probably like Randy Smith like 45 by now or whatever. But yes, I am the voice of Brother Miras.
Oh, I see.
That's basically accidental. I mean, the entire Miras thread was my own invention, and I wrote all his dialogue and everything. And so when I went in, we were doing voice recording, and I was like, here, let me do a scratch track of this so that the voice actor knows what's intended by these lines, because some of it's like kind of weird and goofy.
Yeah.
And I was probably being a little bit, a helicopter parent on my level, and I should have just trusted in the competent voice to understand the intricacies of the script. But anyway, so I did a rough draft, and Eric, the sound guy, was like, well, we're just gonna process the crap out of this anyway. So guess what? You're the voice actor. That's
awesome.
Like because I wasn't even really trying to act that hard, and so I felt I'm one of the characters in Shock 2. Like Shock 2 has a bunch of different audio logs, and everybody in the studio who was willing to do it wound up being a voice actor at some point.
Mm-hmm.
System Shock 1 and 2 both have this kind of like homespun vibe. Like you really get the sense that the voice actors really were just some random engineer on the in the spaceship.
Yeah.
Because instead they were just a random engineer on the team.
Somebody in chat says you are now Randy Smith 2. Congratulations on your promotion.
Oh man, amazing! What happened to the former Randy Smith 2?
We don't talk about that.
Yeah, his credit got wiped. He's just not known his face of the earth.
Another question from the TTLG thread is while in the Looking Glass days, do you remember having wow, I've been talking too long. Do you remember having any thoughts about Stephen Russell's performances as Garrett and other characters he played? Like, knowing this guy's really good and he's going to go on to do more really cool things.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we obviously love Stephen very much, and so I was not surprised to see him get picked up by the other studios that worked with him, Arcane, and he was on the BioShock series as well occasionally, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, whatever. He's done a ton of stuff. I'll share this one story which I've shared before, but it's kind of a demonstration of how flat the structure was at Looking Glass and how everybody just got to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
But in my interview before I was officially joining the team, I interviewed with Greg, whole team, and one of the last people I interviewed was Greg LaPiccola, the project lead, and he was like, hey, do you have any thoughts about what Garrett's voice would sound like? And here's another aside. Garrett was in the original documentation is referred to as Palmer, Palmer,
mm-hmm.
one who palms. So that was his former name, and then I guess we decided we needed a better name. It became Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we were calling him Garrett already by the time I got this question. And I sort of described, he'd be like kind of gruff and weird, world weary, but tough. And I don't know. I think that was the right answer. I mean, that's basically the Garrett's voice I was imagining. And I don't know if prior to this, there'd been some thought on the team that he would have like a Weasley thief voice or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the day came when Stephen Russell came in to do some of the original voice acting for Garrett's. He came in many times, obviously, but this was like his first pass where we got some of the initial stuff. And I asked Eric, again, the audio guy, genius, heavily decorated, very experienced audio director. And here I am, like this 24-year-old noob on the team. And I was sort of like, hey, I had a thought about what Garrett's voice could be like. Do you mind if I come in? He's like, yeah, sure. And so I basically thought I was just going to sit there and watch. And then, Eric's like, well, what's your idea? And so Steven was there in front of the microphone. I'm like, maybe you could be sort of like, gruff, and he kind of pulled out this Duke Nukem voice, and like, yeah, I'm the thief, and I'm like, no, not like that. He's just like a little bit more tired, and he went to like this dopey dog thing. He's like, I'm a sleepy thief or whatever, and I'm like, no, I'm not getting it. It's like, kind of like world weary and cynical, but tired and gruff, and then he just instantly got Garrett.
That's awesome.
It's like I gave him 3 pieces of direction. And then so Garrett came out, and I'm like, yeah, that's the one. Like, I think we did a little bit of tweaking after that. But, meanwhile, Eric was just sitting there allowing me to do this. And then it got recorded. All of the dialogue got recorded, that way. And it went out to the team, and the team was like, cool, that's a great voice.
Yeah, it is a great voice. I like it.
Anyway, so just kind of bizarre that, that level of important direction. But just sort of, obviously I was being sheltered by Eric, who wouldn't have let me go off the rails too badly. But he just, let me do this piece of creative direction for the entire project, the entire series.
Yeah. Another thing, while we're on the topic of Stephen Russell, he He came to a convention in my city recently, which was a big surprise to me. I found out like 2 days before, and went and showed up, got stuff signed. But when he was there, he said something that really really interested me. He said that when he first got contacted by Looking Glass, he was contacted for a Scottish spy voice, and
It sounds possible.
yeah, and one thing I know, and I don't know how we know this, but one thing I know is that sometime after Thief 1, I believe, perhaps after Thief 2, I can't remember, there was this project, Looking Glass project, in the works by the name of Deep Cover, which was sort of a spy thing. And I'm wondering, and I think if this was like the first time Stephen Russell was contacted, I think it might have been before you were there, I'm not sure, but I'm wondering if that idea for Deep Cover was around like before the Thief idea ever was.
Yeah, quite possibly. There's a bunch of different ideas that were bandied about at different times. I mean, a lot of people know the story about Better Red Than Undead, and the Dark Camelot concept. Some of those, went deeper into various stages of pre-production than others. There was an idea after Thief Gold, like during Thief 2, or after, I can't remember exactly when, but called Black or White, which we then wound up not pursuing because another game called Black and White came out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peter Molyneux. But the concept of that one is that the graphics were going to be in gray tone, so that was pretty cool. So a bunch of stuff was around. Deep Cover actually made it to some stage of production. I can't remember if that was an Irrational game or a Looking Glass game, but we shared the same office. Irrational made Shock 2, not Looking Glass.
Yeah.
But like literally, they were just like down the hall in a different room. Yeah, and I don't remember a ton about Deep Cover right now, but it's entirely possible that basically before we settled on Thief, and even during the time that we're settling on Thief, there's just a bunch of different ideas coming together. Like part of the reason that there's like arrows from different elements and elemental enemies in the game, and a lot of like sort of chemistry where water and fire and other elements have interactions with each other, is sort of heritage from some of the prior ideas. I think some of that stuff comes from Dark Camelot, for example.
Yeah.
The sword fighting concepts definitely come from Dark Camelot. Some of the stealth stuff actually comes, originally you can see it in the first System Shock game. There's like a section in one of the levels where there's like a bunch of corridors and a bunch of robots kind of patrolling the levels. Mm-hmm. And it's actually possible to get through that without fighting, because there's a stealth model and an awareness model that's going on. And I think that like during that experience is sort of where Doug Church and some of the other people who laid down the design principles of Thief were like, yeah, you can do stealth, you just need a lot of feedback, right? Because stealth is this kind of invisible concept about what's going on in people's brains, and that's why the guards in Thief all talk so much. They're externalizing what's going on in their brains for feedback to the player. Mm-hmm. So a lot of different things were in this stew that then turned into the Dark Project, and then at some point we just whittled it down further and further. The focus became about stealth and stealing, and that's when, originally I think it was Paul Neurath, the company owner, director, founder, who was like, we should just call it Thief the Dark Project. Mm-hmm. And we're like, cool, we're just going to call our game Thief. That's very clear. And I remember Mark LeBlanc, one of the other key, personalities, was like, our next game is going to be called Half-Elf Mage. But it was not. So we never released Half-Elf Mage. Anyway, so it's coming from that heritage.
That's your next game, Half-Elf Mage, confirmed.
Confirmed. The new joint from Looking Glass.
Yeah.
Half-Elf Fighter Mage.
So the last question, excuse me, throat's kind of going now. The last question from the TTLG thread is, has stealth in gaming evolved over these 20 years to where you thought it was, and how do you see it evolving next? Where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I got asked this, I think it was probably 2005 or something. I was at a GDC, and I was like giving a talk on something about stealth, and someone's like, where do you think stealth should go in the future? It's a really hard question, I think, because why is this a hard question? It's hard to know what the future for stealth could be or should be. Like this first entry was already a very simulated, stealth human brain awareness simulator thing set immersively in a an open world swashbuckling game. So like, where do you go from there? That's not to say this is the best possible thing you could do with stealth, but then when I see what a lot of other things did, like Dishonored, which marries it very well to combat, that's one direction, as opposed to Thief, which really steered away from combat and tried to make it not as fun as stealth.
Yeah.
Or very simplified versions, like I said, like some of the Zelda games have stealth, and if you screw it up, you just have to restart at the beginning, or there's turn-based stealth, like Invisible Ink is something I mentioned earlier. Like, I can see it going different places and trying out different things, but it's not like there's a linear evolution where it's like, well, here's the be-all end-all that we're all driving towards.
Yeah, of course. It's all a creative effort.
Yeah, but that kind of in some ways maybe contrasts a little bit with like a dungeon crawling game, which kind of like we can all sort of envision the be all end all, the very perfect dungeon crawling game in a certain way. Not really, because you've got clickers like Diablo, which are activating a different part of your brain than something very tactical or whatever, and thoughtful. But with stealth, like you can't imagine. It's hard to imagine a clicker. I guess this is it, right? It's hard to imagine a clicker version of stealth, and it's hard to imagine a like blitzkrieg, fast action-paced version of stealth. Like stealth kind of already contains a lot of the notions of its rhythms and its core gameplay moments, and where the simulation space is going to be. So yeah, I can imagine approaching it in lots of different ways and dealing with some of its problems in different ways, and therefore activating different parts of your brain when you're playing. But pretty much it's hard to say like, oh, here's where stealth should be. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a hard question.
One question from the Reddit thread that I made as well, and I guess we kind of covered this a bit, but this is a bit of a different angle. So as we said, in my opinion anyway, Thief aged really, really well, like surprisingly well, and is really good nowadays compared to modern titles. Did you imagine, like, when making it, that it would age so well?
I don't know that I did. I was very aware that we had made something incredibly special. Mm-hmm. And even just watching it now, there is like a lot of life and spirit that comes out of it. It's clearly aware of itself, and it's clearly confidently bringing forward this experience in this world. And I think we all knew that as we made it as well, that's it had those qualities, and it stood out even amongst other games at the time, which sometimes were more beautiful or had better frame rates or faster gameplay or whatever. I remember us feeling a little bit intimidated by some aspects of the competition. I mean, Half-Life 1 came out while we were working on Thief. Like, if you won't be intimidated by that, I don't know what you're going to be. Or maybe it came
revolutionary.
Right, or it came out between 1 and 2. I can't remember, but like it's like obviously this game is going to be Half-Life is going to be remembered forever, and here we are working on this other game. We got a lot of superficial similarities. So I think I always knew that the spirit would hold up. One of the reasons System Shock I think isn't as revered is because it doesn't have mouse look, and that might seem like a simple thing, but that's a huge barrier to entry if you're trying to get back in and play that game. It's got it's got tank controls. You just got to really slowly pilot this cursor around the world, and it's not as fun. You can't like whip your head around to look at something quickly, etc. And so that's an example of, despite the fact that it's an amazing and revolutionary and great game with a wonderful immersion and a great world building, all this other stuff, and a cool story, like it kind of got left behind for this technical reason. So I don't know that we knew that people would come back. It would still be playing it as actively as they are today, but I think we were aware that we made something special. That in that part of it, like the creative spirit, we knew it hold up, even if the technology didn't. It's great to see that the technology has held up as well as it has, and of course, it's in part due to the efforts of the community. Yeah,
it's really cool. I'm glad that you realized there's something really good about the game, because it is a special game, as he said. All right, well, I guess that's about all I've got. We could probably ramble about any random topic if we wanted, but I'm not sure if there's that much point at this point.
Yeah, if anyone out there like desperately, or after the fact has a desperate question they really want to ask, and just send your email to my host here, and he'll get the message along to me, and I'll do my best to answer. I don't know if I'm allowed to use your name. Do you go by your name? Or...
Yes, I'm Dalton. Hello.
Send it to Dalton. Like, is that a secret? Is that your secret identity?
Kind of. I think it's actually in my Twitch description. I don't really advertise it very much, but it's not really a secret.
Are you also Batman?
I've never been seen in the same room as Batman. Take that how you will.
Okay, we'll work on that. We'll interpret. Well, thanks, all. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you hosting me.
Thank you for coming on. It's been a ton of fun. You know, I was actually I was really nervous for a while coming up with this, but you're really easy to talk to. It's really cool.
Oh, cool. I mean, you're easy to talk to too.
I appreciate that. So yeah, it's been great.
You're a much better thief player than I am.
I've had a lot of practice.
I was pretty good for the game came out. I was one of the best in the world. The game was publicly released. I was known to be one of the best thief gamers.
Yeah.
Like, no more.
Skaki and Stubitsky say thank you for the interview.
Cool. Thanks for being out there, guys. We appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you for watching.
All right. Take good care, everyone.
Have a nice night.